Linda, and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. At this time, the next order of business is the adoption of the regional caucus rules presented on 503. Are there any changes to the regional caucus rules? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the regional caucus rules as presented.
Second.
Okay. We have a first and a second, so at this time I'd like to call for a vote on the adoption of the regional caucus rules as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. I was just informed that there are people having difficulty logging onto the Wi-Fi. So there is a password that you should have, and it is capital P, as in piano, TG, Technician Guild, 2019.
All caps.
No, just the capital, the first letter, P. Capital P, lowercase t, lowercase g, 2019. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. Of the name of the network? JW Marriott Conference, CONF. Just pause a moment for everybody to connect. Okay, I believe we've given them enough time to do that. I wanted to advise everyone that this meeting is being streamed live on the internet. So put on your best smile. At this time, the next order of business is the adoption of the council agenda. Are there any corrections or additions to be made?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Michael Gutowski, CERDP. I'd like to move to amend the agenda. Move to strike all of Section 9 and replace with Section 9 special orders. A, long-range planning and open forum.
Restate.
Yes, I'm sorry. Move to strike all of Section 4 and replace with Section 4 special orders. A, long-range planning and open forum.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there? Second. Is there any discussion?
So open forum means anything can be
Hearing no discussion, can we have a vote? All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? The motion carries.
Wim, please, why, is it my understanding that the time factor for the election is still in place? Or is that gonna be revised?
It says on or around, so it's not a fixed time.
Okay, so we can extend that without
Yes.
making motions or?
Yes.
Okay, besides that, it was my understanding that several members of the board attended a meeting in Japan recently, and I would like to add to the agenda at the end, if someone could explain what that was all about, please, in addition to the end of the agenda.
Okay, so we can add that to the late submission.
Late
letter A.
submission. Thank you.
So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we're going to title that late submission letter A, IAPBT, International Association of Piano Builders and Technicians.
Point of order,
Yes, sir.
do changes in the amendments or the agenda or additions to the agenda have to be made in the form of a motion and voted on, or can they just be announced?
If you're changing it to motion.
Because of the changes, type of changes that you're making, doing them one at a time is more efficient, and then we will approve the entire agenda as amended at the end.
So this time, if there's no further discussion on adding IAPBT to late submission letter A, I'll entertain a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. If there are no further changes to the agenda, I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
So move.
A second? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. I trust everyone has read the officers' reports. If there's no objection, by general consent, the officers' reports will be received for information. Hearing none, the officers' reports will be received for information by general consent. I assume that everyone has read the reports that are listed as other reports, Roman numeral 3. Are there any corrections to be made? If there are no objections by general consent, the other reports will be received and filed for information. Hearing none, the other reports will be received and filed for information by general consent. Okay, we are now dealing with the amendment of Roman numeral 9 being moved into this next position. And this will be an open forum and review of the current long-range plan.
Hey, Clint? Clint? I need to get my laptop hooked up to the screen.
Okay. Did they give you a cord? There you go.
There'll be a slight delay in getting Secretary Treasurer's computer hooked up to the screens.
Who's got a good joke?
Just by way of background, the long-range plan, the review of this current long-range plan has created over the past 9 months with the help of a consultant from I. Boswell Corporation and the entire PTG board.
Mr. Chairman, while we're waiting for this,
Yes, sir.
would it be possible for you to introduce the people at the front table, please? Some of us don't know everybody.
Thank you. Okay, I've been asked to introduce the front table. And to my right is Mark Poulin, our Secretary Treasurer. Chris Schweizer from the Home Office, the Executive Assistant. One of our new hires. And of course, our Executive Director, Barbara Cassidy. Taking over the role as a timekeeper for our council. A reminder that it's 10 minutes per topic and 2 minutes per speaker, and you shouldn't speak twice before someone else has a chance to address the assembly. And please welcome Maria Pollock, our timekeeper. And yours truly, Vice President Paul Adams.
Patrick Drain, Boston chapter, and so is Barbara Cassidy also being our parliamentarian, or is a parliamentarian in the room? I mean, we're supposed to have a parliamentarian, correct?
Ms. Cassidy is a registered parliamentarian, and
I'm
she's
just
speaking
wondering
out
which hat she's wearing, or how many hats.
As always, as many as she needs to. Minor technical difficulties continue. Just be another moment or two. This time I'll direct your attention to our Secretary Treasurer, Mark Poulin.
Piano tuners in the house. Okay,
it's a little bit small, and I apologize for that. We kind of blew it up as best we can, but just follow along. It's not difficult to follow. So, Mr. Adams kind of stole my thunder a little bit with my intro. So the PTG Board of Directors, we contract with a company called iBoswell. It's a strategic planning company from the Kansas City area. They were really amazing. It's a small group of people, but they are obviously professionals at this, and they made us think of things we never thought in a million years, and processes, and so on and so forth. I'll be describing throughout this brief presentation. So the Board of Directors hasn't adopted this plan yet. It will be on the agenda for post-council board. We wanted to present it in this forum before we actually voted on it, for commentary and things of that nature. It is quite impressive, and if anything, it's a little overly complicated, but it gives us a very defined roadmap for the future of the Guild at this point anyways. So, like I said, this is the opportunity for you to see what's going on and to make some commentary. So, we did it as part of our winter board meeting. We met for a couple days in advance of our scheduled board meeting to do this strategic retreat, is kind of what they called it. So the agenda was really simple. It was just the typical welcome and introductions, and then a little background on the rise and fall of organizations and how that whole process works. It doesn't really matter what your organization is. They all tend to follow the same type of curves. So they were talking to us about that. Then we did the environmental assessment highlights, which was the stakeholder input, programs and services assessments, how we do business and what our membership think of what's going on. There was a couple exercises, and then the important part was the identification of the initiatives and other key points of the plan, what our priorities were. And then it was the steps for the plan completion. So this little circle thing you see up there was kind of just kind of a buzz thing to get our attention about tactics and culture and strategy. All this comes together to make an excellent corporation. So it's just one of those nice little things they put up there, and that's neat to look at, but what does it really mean? It depends on if you put things in place and it actually works. The real important thing that opens a lot of eyes was this growth curve. This is what I was saying. All corporations and organizations tend to follow this same curve right across the board. So, it's first identified by George Land, a PhD, who was a biosystems scientist. And they studied the human behavior, the model for growth, so on and so forth. So there's typically 4 phases of organizational growth, which are laid out on this chart. So phase 1 there at the bottom is the startup, self-explanatory. Phase 2 is the growth and stability. Time goes by, consistent growth period, focus on maintaining and improving your operation, so on and so forth. That rise up from the beginning. 3 is the peak. The organization is just humming along, doing a great job. Things are going really, really well. And depending on what the organization does, you can see the 4th phase, which is the decline. If renewal or transformation is not achieved, it's going to decline. If you don't change with the times, you're going to decline. We talked about this for quite a length of time, and they asked us the million-dollar question at the end of this is, where do we think the PTG is on this curve? Anybody want to make any kind of guess where we are? We are in 4. Is that a problem? Absolutely. So a lot of comparisons were made to Blockbuster and Betamax and a few other things that I don't think some people in the room would even know what a Betamax is. But we don't want to go the way of Blockbuster. So what do we do about that? We need to come up with a plan of what we're going to be doing here. We've talked about strategic planning for many, many years, and things have come and gone. But what has been consistent within the PTG about our planning process? It goes along for a couple of years, and then something else comes along, and we move on and forget about it. Pretty true statement, correct? So they came up with a strategic plan structure. It's very structured. There will be timelines and policies and procedures in place to keep us from doing exactly that. If we adopt this plan, we need to follow the rules because it will become part of the organizational policy that we have to follow these rules. So we, as piano technicians, we love rules. Our bylaws have kind of said it all about that. So the basic plan is kind of what it says here. There's the vision and the mission, which is that high level goals, and then your values are mixed into this and a couple other things. But all said and done, it spits out to your strategic initiatives, your really big points of what you want to see happen. And then there's some goals that follow underneath those, and then the tactics of how you're going to reach those goals, and eventually the actions to make those goals happen, and make the tactics goals, so on and so forth. It's a flow chart. So some of the stuff they did before we even began is you have to do your research. So the leadership has to be equipped with accurate information. So they did some surveys, and they looked at some of our past surveys. So we need the stakeholder feedback. So they did interviews with the board of directors. We sent out another survey, and they had access to all the surveys that have been done in the past. And they looked at our membership data, which that alone is a pretty telling statement. You'll see a chart about that here in just a minute. So the interviews that took place were of the board of directors for obvious reasons. So it was Mr. Adams, Mr. Brown, Mr. Davis, Jim Ferris, Doug Garman, Michael Katowski, Chris LeVar, myself, Mark Perney, and David Stocker, our board of directors. Yeah. Hey. Okay, what percentage should I go to, Mr. Perney?
125. 125.
In the lower right-hand corner, too.
Is that good? Bigger, smaller?
Yeah, that's good. That'll do it. It'll stay formatted.
How's that?
Go down to the lower right-hand corner. There you go. No, above that. There you go. There you go.
See, you just need to tell us what to do and we make it happen.
Could you slow down a little bit so I can understand?
Hard to hear or something, Ed? The hair. Okay.
That good?
Well, that's,
Chairs up here.
there you go.
That better?
That's enough.
Member input, here we go. Okay, so the highlights from the board interviews. So was, what are our priorities? And some were education, some were certification, and some were both. The PTG and pretty much everyone is in agreement. We've been a little, had a touch of multiple personality disorder over the years. And some people think we're a certification organization, others think we are an educational organization. Some people think we're a social club, but pretty much we all agree that education and certification are the two biggest priorities for us being here. Membership, it was addressing the decline in numbers and eventual decline in revenue. If we don't do something different and fix our membership, we're going to die. That goes without saying, we all know it. So there was some concern about value proposition to new membership. Is there bang for the buck or not? If you want to stop somewhere and have a little discussion about any of these points, just let us know, okay? So, and then there was a lot of discussion about the perceived hierarchy, the associate versus RPT, and the conflict that can appear between the two groups. So some of the opportunities that we're not taking advantage of and we're looking at was maximizing our online presence. We've started that process, but other people have done it before us and are doing a much better job, and we need to fix that. There is a humongous hole for us to go forward and do that. As well as the format for the journal. Are we going to continue it with print? Are we going to go online? Are we going to do both? Can we expand our offerings for the journal? That's a very important question as well. So board effectiveness, how do we provide better leadership? The board has always been a volunteer organization, and some people have more skill with leadership than others, but how do we improve the effectiveness of the board as a group? Did I just lose my mic?
Yes.
Something changed. Weird. Okay. So, and then another thing was clarifying roles and assessing the staff talent, how to support this. What can we do with our home office staff to maximize their effectiveness for us as a group? Bang for the buck. So that was the board portion. And then the member survey. This was all the things we've done over the years, the general trends. And the big thing they pointed out is there was no real difference between the board's opinions and the members' opinions. So we're all in the same boat on this one. There's no us versus them looking at things differently. So there were some differences in response with age groups, which I thought that was kind of interesting. The cost of the annual convention was perceived as higher by those under the age of 30. I guess the old farts who have a little more money don't seem to care about it quite as much. But it was a very small sample size, so it can't really be pointed at as something in particular. So value proposition to a new member is pretty well the same as a current member. Everyone agrees that the value of the organization is about the same across the board. Differences in value of associate versus RPT. The associates found the certification less valuable. Over the years, we've talked about the certification as an RPT is more often than not for personal satisfaction, and the associates are calling out that fact. And they also found the PTG and RPT marketing less valuable. That is not why they're here. But everyone across the board said the journal is the most important resource we have, period. So kudos to our journal staff for darn sure. So then they looked at our programs and services, and already made the statement, the PT Journal came in as number 1, the annual conference came in as number 2, which those are education, period. So it kind of shows that, okay, that's our priority. We do a very good job at those 2 particular aspects of it. So then the member chapter services, educational products, forums, resources, online education, grant action regulation, the voicing class, the exam prep on the road. The ones that came in dead last, merchandise was dead last. We're not really here to sell stuff. So, but some people like the brand, but it's not really it's not a core facet of the organization by any means. So some of the highlights of the member surveys, the challenge, the associate versus RPT conflict, for lack of a better term. And then the membership was addressing the decline in numbers. You're going to see a lot of the same stuff over and over and over again. It's kind of slapping us in the face as an organization that these are our problems, you need to fix them. Opportunities, again, the online technical training, the website, the members value certification and education equally. We need to continue to offer both. So that part, we get it. So data trends, this was quite interesting. The staff, the home office staff, provided the membership numbers which were plotted on a graph, which had never been done. And all of us were kind of going, why haven't we done that before? But you can look at our numbers. The gray line that's down here at the bottom is the associates. The blue line down here at the bottom, the kind of flat line, that is the new RPTs. The orange line that's on the slow decline, those are RPTs. And that is the top blue line is our membership in general. So the thing we found most interesting is this kind of high point of the associates right here. And that was kind of the high point for our membership up here as well.
What year?
So that was approximately 2007. Let me just double check. Yes, approximately 2007.
Surprise, surprise, yeah.
So, do you know what council did that particular year?
Took away the advertising rights for the associates.
Say that again, Rem, a little louder.
This body voted to take the advertising rights away from the associates.
And the logo. You are absolutely correct.
The economy also crashed.
Yes,
The economy also collapsed, exactly. And we had the discussion of which is it. We don't know the answer to that, but this decline has continued even though the economy has gotten better. So,
We have a market base.
if you want to speak, you need to come to a microphone. I can't hear you from the back of the room.
Carl Lieberman, alternate. There's, drawing these type of conclusions is dangerous from the staff. The idea that the changes that we make in categories or logos or things like that, and thinking that that's why things are happening, I think is simplistic and dangerous.
You are absolutely correct, and we take this with a very large grain of salt. But the data is there. Take it for what you will. So,
Edmund Morris, Seattle. And the point that there is a lot of somehow dissension with associate members is we don't find that in the Seattle chapter at all. There's no problem with the status of what's that they have that's ever been communicated. We have associates who are on the board, fully partake. And so from our chapter, that's not shown.
This was the survey of the entire membership. So individual chapters might be doing better than others. This was a survey of the membership. So just putting that out there.
Tremaine Parsons, Sacramento Valley Chapter. My only question is this document available to membership?
I don't see why it shouldn't be. So I do believe this presentation is going to be posted after we're done with this process today.
All right, so this document will be available?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have that exact same comment. Do you know where it will be posted? Ashley Turner, alternate for DC chapter.
Barbara's telling me forms and documents on the website.
Thank you.
In any case, this chart, we should have done this a long time ago.
Point of order. Where are we on the agenda?
This is long-range planning, item 4A.
So the entire open forum is at this moment?
It will be as soon as we're done with this.
This is it?
This is the beginning of it, yes.
Thank you.
Point of order, what page is that on the agenda?
It is not written in the agenda. This entire presentation is not.
It was Roman numeral 9 in the agenda, which was the review of the current long-range plan. And as the agenda was amended, this was moved to after 3. And now we are in that long-range plan, and then included in this section will be the open forum, once Mark is finished with his presentation.
So the number of RPTs, we were looking at that going, that is really concerning. As we're all aware, the RPT is the backbone of the organization, both for volunteers and financially. Volunteers, that is starting to shift since the associates were allowed to fill in most positions. But that slow decline is showing what's going on with the organization. And we really looked at that going, that is telling right there. Again, if you want to make commentary, please just come up with the microphone.
Could you lower that a little bit to show the very bottom of the chart? As you can see, and that blue line down there, if you go down even further, is the new RPTs. Back in about 2002, 2003, I did a kind of a rough survey, and it showed that since about 1985, there had been a decline of RPTs almost every year, and it shows in that. Up until that time in 2002, there had never been a year where we gained in the number of RPTs in our organization. And I believe that if we want to change that orange line in the upward direction, we need to make some changes in how the exams are administered and given. I'm not talking about changing the requirements of the exam at all, but we need to change the way they are given and administered. We took one step, I believe it was last year, when we allowed 2 retakes of parts before we had to take the whole thing again. We've gone a good way into having the RPT or the exam on the road, but this body and the board needs to do more to get more associates the opportunity to take the exams. And I think that should be one of the prime goals of this organization. Thank you.
2 seconds, Pat. Just, honorary, you see that gold line kind of buried under the new RPTs. The board, we did a revision of the bylaws a couple days ago, and the honorary member category has now ceased to exist. We had precisely 0, and we didn't foresee that ever changing, so it is no longer in existence at all.
Patrick Drain, Boston chapter. Well, first, just on a general point, council's here. The main thing we can do is to vote for our officers and to discuss things. And to be able to discuss things, we need timely information. There's a reason why our council book used to be appearing like 3 months in advance, and now it's available a month in advance. And it's highly important that documents such as this are available to us in a timely manner. And I know it's very dramatic, it's good theater to roll it out here, but this is very important. Okay.
This presentation, the board only received a number of weeks ago, so we're all in the same boat.
A number of weeks ago wouldn't have been bad. Thank you, sir.
So everyone knows the trigger on this. You squeeze it. Ladies are lower. Okay.
And so to the data, I know certainly RVPs and other officers, part of your job is to promote membership. And the Home Office has periodically had some promoting membership, reaching out to non-guild members. And I do recall back around when Barb started as executive director, there was a big push that was done. It wouldn't hurt if perhaps you could indicate what's done now to reach out, et cetera, because there was a massive one roughly around 2001, I think, or 2000, between that and 2003, sending lots of mailings out, et cetera. I do know that many times it was bumped off because there's just other fish to fry. So, but if you could speak on that, and a lot of it was being told to wait. Thank you.
This last year, the Home Office started to redesign all of the information packets that we have for the prospective members. Sorry. The new members, the new RPTs, those packets that we send for information, they have all been redesigned. All of the verbiage has been updated. We have a plan that the Home Office has created as far as getting the chapters involved in a membership campaign, much like we did in early 2000. And it is ready to go. We were waiting to see what the results of this long-range planning was and how to tie it in with some of the other things like the education initiative and things like that. So, so we are ready to do just that at this point.
Carl Lieberman, alternate. I want to respond to what William said in the context of what I said earlier. These lines, associates and RPTs, are going down all the time. We're having membership drives, we're playing with the exams, we're doing a million things. To think that our internal policies are what's driving these numbers, there's nothing to actually support that. The larger society, the role of the piano may be changing, and we don't have any impact on that. And so we're all running around trying to do something. We should do something. We should change the exams. We should change the way the exams are administered. I really want to caution against this type of thinking. It's way overly simplistic and will lead us in poor directions.
Amen.
Just squeeze.
Paul Ray, Pomona Valley. It seems we were asking the wrong people why the decline. I think we need to ask the people who have left why they left. So there should be some kind of a
Exit survey is done for those that will respond.
is it followed up?
We send out an exit survey anytime someone leaves. And we put all that information together. Majority of the time, if it's an RPT, we have a 97% retention rate for RPTs. So the majority of the time when those people are leaving is because they're retiring. I'm sorry. Well,
Permanent retirement.
yes, retired from work. So we don't have a problem with that part of it. It's more the associates that are leaving. And much to our surprise, we found out that when an associate will leave, there's only 20% of them that leave within the first year. They'll pay for the first year dues, and they would usually do like 2 or 3 years, and then they may leave after that. And a lot of it is citing that there just isn't, to them, enough benefit, which is where this long-range plan steps in. If we can create the benefit and the reason for them to stay, we can retain them better. But it was a surprise to us that it's not usually those first-year people. They usually do stay in for a while. So we have to tighten up that retention with them.
Thank you, Mr.
Squeeze through it.
The top.
There you go.
Timothy Barnes, Charlotte, North Carolina chapter. Could you scroll down a hair to show the blue line? Sorry, yeah, scroll up just a little bit. There were 3 lines. Okay, perfect, right there. As an economics degree, I interpret a lot of graphs, and like Pat, I found myself looking for this information to go away. So if it was just a few weeks ago, great. So I'm sitting here trying to process a ton of information and a ton of data points and all these things. A couple of things that stuck out to me. The blue line and the gray line are mirror images of each other. And so the orange line tells me that I knew death and permanent retirement were a huge driver of the RPT's retirement. So that explains the blue line. I doubt that's the same reason for the gray line, which causes me to ask a single question: why would an associate leave if it's not for retirement or permanent retirement? And as a leader, I immediately go to mission. Mission is not absolutely clear. And you pointed to that at the beginning of your document. I think that's where we need to focus, not on the policies and things. If we're going to try to solve this through policies and getting more RPTs up to the blue line, that is not an external thing. It has to be an internal thing to all of the associates, and that's where we need to focus our time. What is it going to take?
We're getting the cart a little ahead of the horse.
Yep.
So
Okay.
wait and see. We're not done yet.
Good. Good. Well, those are just my thoughts as I'm trying to process all this information.
Bill Scholl, Motor Valley chapter. Just 2 quick points. One, the little notch in this chart, does that say 1986?
One kind of right to the left.
So in 1986, we went through a change in our organization where we went to an emphasis on the associate member, and we broadened our interest in attracting members. Now, we did continue to gain in RPTs, but we began to, drop in associate members? And our attorneys, as they expressed opinions about, this sort of goes to the second one, they expressed opinions about the significance of certification. It's really interesting to listen to attorneys sometimes. Because we listen to attorneys to tell us to do things that had profound changes in our organization, but we sort of picked and chose. And I'd like to just briefly look at this, because our attorneys tell us that our certifications are what our certification is what is special about us.
Yes.
That is a standard that people will aspire to. And if we minimize it, then there's going to be a less to market. So no matter what we think about how important certification is, and no matter what we think the public thinks about it, our attorneys remind us that that is, and every one of the opinions all over the last 35, 40 years have emphasized not only the legal right to have a certification distinguishing, whether it be through franchising or through other means, that the thing we ought to be focusing on is to get that certification, or those certifications, or whatever we offer, because that gives you an edge marketing a very professional standing in the community. The attorneys have emphasized that, okay? And in 1986, we stopped doing that, and I have 30 seconds. Thank you, Maria. We stopped doing that. We slowed down in doing that in 1986. Now, this last year, we've really reduced it. I think our challenge, because we're on a track now, we're going a certain direction. I think we should think about how we can, in our new context, we should think about how to still maintain this value, the certification value, rather than to worry as much about how associates feel about this. Thank you.
Larry Lobel, San Francisco chapter, and I agree with Bill's comments and also Carl's. And I think rather than looking inward to the organization, what are we doing wrong, why are we losing associates, I think we should be looking outward. Many associates are people who join because they're dabbling. You know, they have an interest in piano technology, they like to be tuners, but then when they really find out what's really involved and how difficult it is and what a big investment of time and money and effort it is, they drop out. And we can't do anything to retain those people, nor do I think we should try. At the same time, I've been participating in and noticing a very large online presence of people interested in the piano technology profession. And there are groups springing up on Facebook. There's a Piano Technicians International group, of which many of our own members and many of the people in this room belong to. And these people are conversing with each other, discussing things, helping each other. These are things that the PTG should have initiated or should be involved in, should be participating in. And it is a way that we can reach new people that want to become part of the profession and would become part of the organization if they had more input from the PTG. So I think, as I said at the beginning, we need to be looking outward, not inward, at the organization's failings. And we need to be taking advantage of the opportunities that are being presented to the PTG by the new online social media.
So we are getting badly bogged down here, so a lot of generalizations and commentary are being made on what we should do. Why don't we save that for the end? Because we're going to talk about the direction we are going.
I need to interrupt. We have reached 10 minutes of this topic, and we need a 2/3 vote to continue.
That's the trigger.
Kathy Smith, LA chapter alternate.
Just a moment, Kathy, the chair has to
Oh, sorry.
make a commentary here.
At this time, we've reached 10 minutes on this particular topic, and if we wish to continue, we're going to need a 2/3 vote to continue this particular topic of discussion. So by a show of hands, how many people in the room would like to continue this discussion?
Point of order.
Yes, ma'am.
Wembley's Hawaii chapter. I would like to make a motion that we have do away with the 10-minute time limit and go until we're done. No second. No second. Forget it.
Okay, so we're looking for a vote on how many people want to continue this topic.
Point of order.
Yes.
How much time are we adding to this agenda item?
It's up to you. This is your forum. You want to do an additional 10 minutes on this topic?
Mark knows what has to be presented.
I got a ways to go, hence why I keep saying we're bogging down.
Yeah.
I'm on page 622, so.
You should have it after the presentation, yes?
We can have discussion afterwards.
Absolutely.
That's what we need.
Just on this particular topic, a show of hands for how many people want to extend this discussion in this particular topic for another 10 minutes. Opposed?
What is this particular topic? This membership thing.
Is this topic the graph on the screen? Or
The graph, yes, not the whole presentation, because we've only got page 6 of 22. We are communicating with the membership. Okay, so that was voted down, so at this point, Mr. Poulin has the floor.
It sounds like a no. It's a me, no. Can I make a suggestion, please? This is Chris LeVar from the Northeast Regional. I'd like to make a suggestion. If we could actually get this document posted for everyone to see, if it takes 5 minutes or so, at least then we have it in hand, and we can come back afterwards.
Well, not all of us have a computer. Chris, not all of us have a computer. We don't have access to it.
Make friends with your neighbors.
Yeah. I mean, it's 20%.
No, I'm sorry. Too hard.
Make do, tutors, make do.
My SAT just ran out of time, out of juice, and I'm going
Can
home.
we finish your presentation and not have any more commentary until you're done? Like no commentary until you're done?
We can do that if you guys would like it that way.
Please.
Make that
Okay, what's being suggested is that we let Mr. Poulin finish the presentation and then have a discussion on the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the corporation we hired conducted a program and assessment using the tools that they use to do this. So allows us to recognize and evaluate programs, how it fits with the mission, the strength of the program, scale, volume, impact, so on and so forth. They used all kinds of buzzwords, but it makes sense in the great scheme of things. So it blends a couple different approaches, and it doesn't really matter, but the steps that they used in the process were identifying the programs and other efforts that, okay, what are we going to look at? What do we do? Complete the impact questions for each program assessed. For the PTG, they used actual questions from member surveys as these questions. So, and then provide financial data to determine profit or loss of these programs. Is it worth us continuing this? What is the impact of those programs financially and to our members? And then PTG staff gave us, Barb basically, Jason gave the revenue and expenses per program. And this is the matrix map that spit out as a result of that. Okay, the bigger the circle is, the more impact it has. Okay, and you can see the left to right is the profitability. I believe it was the x-axis in high school, am I correct? So left to right is the financial portion. The up and down, I believe, was the impact. So in a perfect world, we would want everything in the top right between 12 and 3. We would make lots and lots of money and it would have a really, really high impact. Do we see anything that's in there?
No.
No. So, but at the same time, do we want to see everything in the lower left-hand corner between 6 and 9? So we don't have anything there as well, so that's good. But our 3 biggest items were all in this, we don't make any money on it, but it's a humongous impact. So, okay, that it's partially good news and it's partially bad news. But this is a very simplistic graph to kind of show how this all works. And our merchandise is kind of buried down in there. It has a 2.5 there as far as, which is pretty well the lowest number on the whole blue thing. But anyways, that kind of shows what's going on. The number 1, the big blue, if I remember right, that is I believe that's the journal. Yes, that's the journal. The red is the institute. And then the blue is member and chapter services. So those are the top 3. Not a surprise. But that was all from the surveys and our financial statements.
Mark, what are member and chapter services?
Can I speak to that, Paul? That's kind of your specialty.
The discussion comes later? Yeah.
Yeah, we can get to that a little later.
Write your question down.
No.
Continue on. And this is a little chart they use, that where things fit in. Good fit with the mission and the mission and ability, the journal, the certifications, all that stuff. That it's easy stuff we do, high program attractiveness. This will be posted and you can go through it. If I go through it right now, it'll confuse everybody and really bog us down in it. But they plotted everything on these charts to kind of show it. Tim will have a field day with this, I'm sure.
Oh, I love it.
So, and then this kind of broke down the financial aspect, the journal, the net profit and loss is put right across the revenues, so on and so forth. And that gave us the impact of the program. They're crunching the numbers. The higher the number, the more impact we have. So again, the highest number one right there, the journal, the convention, and so on and so forth. That's where those impact numbers came from. This is the matrix they used to come up with that. Okay, then we did a discussion, the board of directors and the home office staff. We had them participate in this as well, because who knows about the day-to-day stuff, behind the scenes especially, better than the people that are doing it for us. So this was all of us combined doing this little discussion. So we broke out into 3 groups, 2 board and 1 staff, to identify issues and opportunities in each of the areas that have to be addressed during this process. So, some of the this came from the board. This is a combination of both groups, so it's just kind of averaged together. Administration, one commentary was pay examiners for doing the tests. Winner's a radical concept. Internal communications need to be improved. Not a shock to any of us. Piano Cookie Bake Sale fundraiser, because somebody was being a bit of a leadership development and education for the administration portion. Again, not surprising. The relationship between board and staff, which is actually pretty well. A big one that came out was a complete overhaul of our bylaws. So, believe it or not, that is done. We'll talk about that later. So then the volunteers, how do we get more people to volunteer? That is a nationwide plague on volunteer organizations. We are not alone in that one. Fewer people are having to do the same load because we have all these time-saving devices, but everyone is too busy to help. So how do we fix that? Good question, because we're not alone. So RPT versus associate equity. We talked about that conflict beforehand. Not all chapters have that, but a lot of them do. So there was a lot of talk about everyone as being a member. Associate has its connotations, apprentice has its connotations, so on and so forth. What is the appropriate term for our membership? We have RPTs, that goes without saying, but are we all or not members? Something to think about. So RPT versus associate, we have to get this problem solved because we're going to fix it or we're going to die. We have to eliminate that culture of angst between the two. Make our members the experts in piano technology, not just the RPTs, the members as a whole. Because the PTG, we're supposed to be the experts, right? That's what we tout ourselves to. So why are we saying half of our membership are not experts? If you're a member of PTG, should we all be experts? You betcha. RPTs have taken the certification exams, and that's a wonderful thing. But we need to be able to tout all of our members as technicians, not just RPTs necessarily. So, get rid of the term associate was brought up, and the structure of certification, how we do that. So, membership, how can we have value to non-PTG techs? How can we attract them to pay attention to what we're doing? Good question. How to make the PTG valuable to non-members, getting our message out there, attracting them to come in. Reaching out to college students, potential future members. We do a great job at North Bennett Street because they support the PTG tremendously. We cannot thank them enough. They are the #1 engine for new members more than anything else. And what does our next member look like? Who should we be marketing membership to? So, and then the outreach and the marketing. Public at large sees the PTG members as experts in the field of piano technology. That's what we would hope. Whether that's true or not, good question. Expand internationally. In China, there are, what's the number of members? Or technicians? The Chinese Association of Piano Technicians, whatever that term is, there's 7,200 members in China alone. So could we reach out to some of these international people?
When we were at IAPBT, there was a discussion amongst, in the board of directors meeting, it came up as to how many members were in the various associations of the countries that were represented. And the only country that was growing in the number of technicians was China. 2 years prior, there were 6,000 in their association, and at that meeting that just occurred, it was 7,200. Everyone else is either flatlined or declining. We were also in the decline.
So, international, we have some humongous opportunities out there. Collaborate with other educational entities, press releases for individual member promotion, make our members the experts, not necessarily PTG as an organization. Freemium service for unaffiliated techs, the use of the logo, displays at piano teachers' conferences, hiring a social media specialist. These are all ideas being thrown out there as part of this. Just keep that in mind. This isn't a plan. This is just some thoughts that were tossed on the table. So online, which would be a subset of education and/or marketing. It should be both, really. But increasing the digital presence, incentives for digital delivery of the journal without having to search to find it. Help chapters with understanding the online resources. Integration of the journal and online presentations into our programming more. Visual and audio center to enhance the members' skills, directory app for members, a handier one than what we have now. And online participation at meetings, webcasts, so on and so forth, which is just a Charlotte chapter that's doing a bad enough job with that, so we need more of that. Education. Certification is education. People working towards the RPT exams, that they are going through an educational process. So we need to continue to promote that. Continuing education required for RPTs. That one landed with a heavy thud. But it should be thought about. I don't know about required, but continuing education for RPTs, I think that's a pretty good idea. Developing piano technology curriculum, a set curriculum, not just kind of randomly what we've always done. Recognize a marketable identity for PTG education. What are we trying to do? Professional development in marketing. We're all terrible at marketing, except for a few, but for the most part, we're terrible. And education from zero. This is a piano to RPT and beyond. Should we be doing that? There's very few others doing that, so something to think about. Our staff, publication, digital journal, maybe. Educational programs, how we can increase that. How can we support the members? The profitability of programs, that profit and loss. We've always done things because, well, we just do them. Well, should we continue to do these programs or not? Is it worth it? Building chapter strength, webcasting for those who cannot make it, all the digital presence, marketing the RPT and or the PTG as a whole, and convention attendance. Those were their big concerns.
I've just been informed by our executive director that this document has been posted for the current time to PTGL, and that in the near future it will also be on www.ptg member area forms and documents. So it'll be in both places, but for now it's already up on PTGL.
You asked, and we try to get it done. So, what does success look like for PTG in 3 years? They asked us that question. And we sat down and threw out, in a little small group discussion, 9 key areas of what are our priorities. And financial sustainability, keeping us afloat. So membership growth, which goes hand in hand with the financial stability. Our education programs, then board development, staff development, chapters, organization, volunteers, so on and so forth. But the membership growth and financial sustainability, I look at those two as basically one and the same. But those were our priorities within this discussion. So we brainstormed what success 3 years from now, what might look like, how we can get there, how can this be woven into the plan as we're developing it. Not every idea noted below may end up in the plan. The exercise let us throw it out there and give some pipe dreams. So there was a visioning exercise. So in the great scheme of things, how could we end up reaching this financial stability? What can we do? What would be our be-all and end-all? Was the programs are all self-sufficient, and we always make a profit. Our operating reserve should be at least 1 full year always in the bank. New revenue streams, how can we make more money doing things different we haven't done before? The green program being successful, that's some of the reason you don't have your council books this year, so on and so forth. continuing those initiatives. Corporate sponsors, working better with these corporations to make things happen for us. And this one was definitely unique and had a lot of discussion. Opening up the RPT exams to non-members. There's a concept for you. So, membership.
Explain that.
We'll get to that later.
Okay.
So membership, ideally 5,000 members. That was a number just kind of thrown on the table. Have we ever reached 5,000 members? No. Would it be a nice pipe dream? You betcha. So increase members by 10%. Okay, that's a realistic goal. 4,000 globally. Okay, that's a reasonable goal. PTG is made of members. Are we or are we all not members? All members can feel their ideas are heard and considered. And younger and more diverse members. Younger, there's a concept. And internationally expanding. And developing additional member categories, corporate members maybe. Bringing these people that are, the allied tradesmen, is the old term ones. Things to look at. So our educational programs, okay, what's our pipe dreams there? Quality online education with extremely high demand. People want to see our stuff, that's the next goal. Decreased fear of the RPT test. There's so much angst around it. How can we decrease that? Easily accessible exams. People can get them when they want them. Technology-driven curriculum. The new ways of doing things. New options for certification. Just because we've always done it this way doesn't mean we should continue necessarily. Increase annual conference attendance. There's the next goal. Decrease regional conference. I didn't quite understand that one. I don't really remember off the top of my head. We'll discuss that later. A la carte educational training menu that you can pick and choose the topics you want at the time you want, so on and so forth. Live streaming of the institute and institute classes. Here's a concept. Home office webcast, online exam, which has been a work in progress for a long time. So, pipe dreams, but can we make them happen? I think we can. So, ideally for our board, strong leadership development program. Flexible, responsive, and future-looking board of directors, not getting tied down in the here and now, but working for the future. No messing with the bylaws at every board meeting. There's a concept. More diverse. Board training, actually training us to do our jobs. Better communication with staff. Direct member elected, getting away from council elected. Sounds like doing away with the electoral college, doesn't it? One live meeting. The rest of the video conference to minimize time away from your business that you don't necessarily have to attend and participate. More task forces, less standing committees. Simplify bylaws. Again, what a concept. Our staff, more diverse, better compensated. We know where that came from. More appreciated. That one really made me feel kind of sad that some of our home office staff would feel less than appreciated. That one I think we can all work on pretty easily. More staff. Ongoing professional development, giving them opportunities to improve themselves. And then our chapters. Empowered active chapters with engaged members. Some chapters do this better than others. We need to figure out what's going to happen with that. More active chapters, more community presence online, leadership training, technical sharing, or sharing capability with cost sharing. It sounds kind of like cooperation, working together. So then organizational systems IT. So we're going to need quality AV production if we're going to do all this online stuff, right? Work from home, member database, and all that kind of stuff needs to be improved. And monthly dues, and dues monthly instead of once a year. We've heard that for years and years and years, right? Equipment to produce the digital resources, better web forms, an amazing website, voice-activated PTG app. I like that one. That's future thinking. So volunteers, what are our pipe dreams here? Increased volunteerism. We need more help. Online recruitment, online training, identify the skill sets, well-defined roles. And then the marketing, respect in the musical community. As you're all aware, PTG, what's that for 90% of the people out there? Close working relationships with the manufacturers. Equal promotion for member types. Digital communications more so. Organizational vision to the market. Increased awareness by the world. And what's CRM? Say that again.
Customer relationships.
Okay, the database. Customer relations, something or other. Hey, I'm a cop, I don't do well with things like that. So, the meat and potatoes of what we came out with. This is all available online. I'm not gonna get down into the weeds on this. But, the initiatives we decided to, and we narrowed this down to, strategic initiative number 1 is professional development. Develop and implement well-curated, relevant, high-quality education and certification programs that advance the skills of our members and ultimately the quality of service for the world's pianos. That's a pretty ambitious statement, right? Is it doable? You betcha.
We've been doing it.
We're getting that way. So again, I'm not going to go into the weeds, but there's some sub-points of these. I'm going to quickly go through them, okay? So curriculum and program implementation. Ensure that we have a well-researched curriculum that meets our members' needs and remains well-curated. That well-curated part was important. That we have a lot of these resources and stuff out there that's done, and then they go on the shelf and they're never updated. They're not fresh. So not only have this program have an actual curriculum, but keep it up to date. Certification. Continue to provide certification programs, demonstrate competencies for highly skilled piano service that aligns with best practices of established certification programs, while increasing accessibility of the program. Convention. Advance the quality, relevance, and participation in the Convention and Technical Institute. And a really ambitious one, Education Clearinghouse. Explore the opportunities to be a clearinghouse for educational materials developed by others that can be utilized by our members. Essentially, we're the one-stop shop for education. So, Initiative 2, membership engagement and equity. Grow an engaged and sustainable global membership, bringing value to all members involved in advancing the PTG mission. So, a unified membership, establishing a unified membership model and culture that is dedicated to advancing the interest of all members. We are all members of the Piano Technicians Guild. Communications, continue to advance helpful communications to and from membership. International, continue to opportunistically grow our membership across the globe. Develop strategic partnerships that will help advance our membership growth goals and missions. And then the next one, building chapters. Support vibrant chapter activities, membership, and leadership to advance our networking and grassroots member benefits. So the sub part of this first one, review and revise if needed chapter structures to support chapter vitality, including closure and merger or online and virtual chapters, aka communities of practice. So that sounded a little confusing. It really came down to we have a lot of chapters, but if they're not effective, how can we make our chapters more effective? If it means shutting them down and combining it, that's not a bad thing.
Amen.
Having a lot of chapters doesn't mean we have a lot of good chapters.
Amen.
So if we're going to do it, let's do it right. Home office and RVP support. Home office and RVPs will provide specific support to advancing healthy chapters. Chapter leadership development. Advanced chapter leadership, training opportunities to support the healthy chapters. More often than not, our chapter leaders are elected because, well, one, they didn't show up and got elected, or, well, nobody else wants it, so I can do that. That's got to change. That's not really the best way to do business. And again, this is the 10,000-foot view of what we're talking about right now. These strategic initiatives, there's 6 of them, those are the big things, and then there's these points, and then it continues down that flow chart. We are not discussing the tactics and everything else further down, so these are still very raw. There are more documentation for how this process continues. So, marketing and outreach, becoming the recognized experts in the field of piano technology and to provide ongoing marketing efforts to advance membership growth and member benefits. So the important thing I took away from this was recognized experts. We know we're the experts. The rest of the world, not so much. So recognized experts. Membership recruitment marketing plan. Develop and implement a marketing plan focuses on growing membership, targeting market to non-member technicians, as well as other potential members. Yeah, we've been doing that for years, but we're doing it poorly. We gotta get better at that. And public marketing. Develop and implement a structured approach to marketing PTG members to the general public and searching for piano technology services. And then our people. Number 5. Recruit and retrain highly competent, diverse, and engaged staff, board, and volunteers who are committed to our code of ethics and mission. Not the form of election. We want people that are engaged and active. So board and governance, ensure we maintain a board committed to collectively develop and implementing their strategic direction, highest level of effective and efficient governance. So, worthy goal. An agile strategic planning process. This is big. Maximize the use of a strategic plan as a roadmap to assess, report, update, there's a concept, progress, as well as make plan changes as needed to make sure our efforts are targeted. Not coming up with a plan and sticking to it, whether it's working or not. Being flexible. Continuing to modify our plan. That has never been done. It's always been a couple of years, and that's not working, and we forget about it and move on. That needs to change. Recruit, develop, and retain an engaged, informed, and skilled staff who provide their talent and expertise. We love our staff. They do a great job for us. So, volunteers. Recruit, engage, support, and develop a diverse, valued, and loyal core of volunteers to advance our successful implementation of the plan. Volunteers are the bedrock of this organization, and we need to get more people engaged. We all love this group. We all want to be here. We all want to be members. We all need to get behind the cart and push. And we need to encourage people and laud them for their efforts. So the last one is operational excellence and financial sustainability. Effectively manage the resources entrusted to us. Ensure we have systems and procedures in place to operate effectively. We need to be efficient. Our membership is dropping, our financial resources are dropping. We need to up our game and make sure we're doing things that need to be done and doing them well. So, programs, pricing, and structure. Ensure we strategically price programs so they're significantly discounted for members while still covering the cost to deliver, with the exception of core dues included benefits, obviously. So, systems. Ensure we have efficient and effective systems, resources, tools, so on and so forth to do our functions. And maintain fiduciary and investment oversight. We have to maintain those sound practices and investments. We are in a good financial place. We want to stay there. So those are the big six. And then, how much is this going to cost? Some of this stuff goes into, this is a flow chart that's in there about approximate dollars, time, and kind of a timeline. Starting points, ending points for each of these points. So I won't go into that because it'll get us in the weeds badly, but it is there. And then the big part, which is my favorite of this whole thing, is the strategic plan oversight part, the policies and procedures. So when the board votes on this at post-council, this is going to go in our policies and procedures that we have to follow this. 2 years from now, when it's a completely different board, it's not going to get chucked aside and forgotten about unless they actively vote to change the policies. Because we love policies, we love procedures, we have to follow them to the letter. So, okay, we're going to make it happen. We have to follow this, whether we like it or not. And if you don't, change it, but there's a procedure for it. So it's the intention of the piano technician's guild to maximize the use of this plan as our roadmap by maintaining an ongoing process of assessment, reporting, and updating, ensuring our focus and efforts are targeted at meeting the mission, needs, and responsibilities. And it spells out exactly how we're going to continue to keep this a living document. Are we going to continue working with this particular consultant? Maybe, maybe not. That's a question for future boards. But we have already had that discussion of this process was invaluable, and it's the first time in a very long time that a structured plan with professionals was done. And it was educational for darn sure. But that part talks about how this plan is going to change and where we are going forward with it. So, I do believe that is pretty much the end of it.
The only point I wanted to interject was that in this policies and procedures portion of the plan, it actually has tiers of who can alter what aspect of the plan and at what level of the plan. And it gets progressively more difficult to alter higher level priorities within the plan than smaller elements in the plan. So it's set up as a hierarchy of tiers of who can make changes and of what. And people that have been in this organization for many, many years know that over the years there have been plans that have been set up, and then you get a new administration and they're taking a look at it and saying, well, I've got my own ideas of what I'd like to do. And so there's no continuity, there's no institutional memory, And this is being set up in a way to maintain that. Okay, at this point, before we get into the open forum and question period, we're going to take a 15-minute pause for personal privilege, and let us reassemble at 20 minutes to 10. We will now recess for that.
Oh, oh, Barb. Ah. How nice. How sweet is that, you know?
Once again, I'd like to call everyone back to their seats so we can continue with the meeting.
I do. My wife would kill me if you don't. Lunch. Barb, thank you.
I'd like to call the meeting back to order. And first up at the microphone is Tim Barnes.
First off, to the board, and Mark, thank you for that presentation. Mark just invited us into the weeds of all of these topics, and I just want to start off by...
We cannot hear.
You cannot hear. Is this better? There we go. All right. Timothy Martin, Charlotte chapter. Let's start right. Thank you, Mark, for that, and the board for putting the time into this. So Mark just invited us into the weeds, and I want to provide just 30,000-foot view. As soon as the internet made it possible to reach anybody in the world, everybody and everything became our competition. This is true for every single person in this room, and this is true for our organization. We are absolutely inundated with infinite information in this world, and that is really hard to wade through. As a consumer, as a business owner, and as an organization. And so when you're fighting infinity, the only way to fight that is with clarity. You have to be able to so quickly and concisely, clearly communicate who you are and what your value is, because your time is limited in front of whoever it is that you're trying to advertise to. And so the only way to do that clarity well is to have a very crystal clear and narrowly focused mission. And from this vantage point, I think we have a great mission as an organization. Right? And if I could just summarize it, it's to provide the highest possible standard for our trade. We're actually the only organization that has done this for almost 60 years. That is our competitive edge. We're the people that get to say, the Guild provides the highest possible standard. So whatever we do in the future, the moment we water down that standard, we lose the clarity and we lose the relevance in the culture because we're fighting against infinity. And for all of the individual people in this room, as we're talking about all of these ideas and whatnot, the biggest danger I see is that we try to do too many things. And one of the graphs that went up, it seems like education, the journal, the conferences, the local chapters, those are the top 3 things that we need to focus on. But the mission that we have, unchanged, focuses on all 3 of those things. Because if we get to say to individual potential piano technicians, we have the highest standard. We say to the manufacturers and dealers, join us for that highest standard. And if I could have 10 more seconds. And we can say to every other person who wants to participate in this trade professionally, we hold the highest standard, that's who we are, that's what we do. And we're going to set the standard, hold the standard, and help you achieve that standard and inspire you to be that. That's what the PTG does. That's how we grow the organization. So, thank you.
If I could just interject briefly, we kind of skipped over this part, but there is an actual vision and part of a mission defined within this plan, so I'll just put that out there. The vision, a very broad statement, is promoting quality service for the world's pianos. Period. Isn't that what we do? The mission is supporting our members to become the best piano tech professionals in the industry by providing professional development, recognizing technical competence, and advancing members' interests. So,
Mike Gallo, Houston chapter. I think the core problem with the organization is perceived value from the general public. If the general public really believed that we were the experts on servicing pianos, not only would they want to use a registered piano technician, also the stores would want to promote us, and all of the manufacturers would want to support us. One thing that concerns me is I think that there is still a danger of someone becoming a member that doesn't know they're a beginner and they still need training. I think that the PTG is the roadmap to becoming that expert, which is defined as a registered piano technician.
Daniel DeBiasio, the New York City chapter. I noticed that we're talking a lot about the members that we have and the members that we're losing, the technicians that exist but don't exist in our organization, and I see a big blind spot, which is the technicians that don't exist yet. People out there who haven't discovered this trade. There are several low-cost things that we could do to raise awareness that being a piano technician is a career and a lucrative one. I've kind of borrowed this model from what I saw the New York Times doing, which was producing a podcast. I understand that they're a large media company and they have a lot of resources, but we do a very excellent job with our journal. And if we put some of those resources toward making media content that was available to the general public, I think that we might see a return on that investment. You know, I didn't know that I wanted to be a piano technician until I met one. And, you know, that was how I got into this, and that's how I became a member here. Had I not met that person, I would probably be doing something else. So, if we reach out past our organization to the general public, I think that we can, I think that would be a good plan.
Mark, could you pull up the line graph, please, of membership? Ed Sutton, Research Triangle Park. Quick response to Daniel, by the way. If you notice in the journal now, we are putting new RPT faces in the journal as just one more thing to recognize people. A comment here. A comment over here. Squeeze not there. I'm going to have to go try to point to a little place right here. Could you bring it up a little higher so we can see the little blue line, the bottom line? Notice right here where the associates drop. Something funny happens. RPTs go up. How'd that happen? Where did those RPTs come from? You know, RPT begins as an associate. Notice exams went up a little bit. If we could raise this line, even just double it, what would happen to that RPT line up there? Yeah. Because I would say that the RPTs, the PTG, are like the repeat customers in the piano service business. You know, if we want stability, that's RPTs is where the stability comes from. So in particular, and I like everything in this plan. There's nothing I disagree with really in what you're doing. But particularly I'm thinking, how do we identify, and this connects with what Daniel said, those associates who are going to become RPTs, right? There are associates, they come in, they're nice people, and we know they're going to drop out. They really don't have the energy it takes. But it's those associates, that tiny group, will save this organization if we can just make that group a little bit bigger.
If I could just make a quick commentary while we're having this discussion. The term associate no longer exists. So the associate member category is no longer there. They are now called members.
When did that happen?
That happened 2 days ago.
Okay, I'm Mark Steiger from the Cleveland chapter. Used to be an associate, I guess. But I wanted to make a comment. First of all, I noticed in the strategic plan is the need for exams more often and more available on a regular basis. I think that's absolutely critical. Also, as an associate, one of the things that would be huge to me is if I could take those exams in parts. If I fail parts, I can retake a part, a single part, but it would be wonderful if, rather than saying to our members, if you want to be an RPG, you need to gain this huge mass of information, and then you can go take the test. If we could take one section at a time, it would break it down into smaller pieces, makes it more manageable. The other thing it does is offer reward. We all know how good it feels when you pass the test. If we could get our associates, so, gee, you passed this section, now the next section, now the next section, there's reward to it. And I think there'd be a lot of value there without sacrificing the quality of what's needed to maintain the kind of level we need for our RPTs. Just thoughts to think about.
First of all, thank you to the board for going through this process. I think it's very productive. My takeaway from this, though, is I think there's a lot of wishful thinking, that things are just going to disappear. Like, for instance, now everyone is a member. There are interest groups with slightly different needs, the RPTs and now just members. And this document makes it seem like we can just do things, we'll promote everyone. We'll promote the PTG is the repository of excellence, not the RPT is the repository of excellence. And we've been wrestling with this issue for the last 35 years, balancing the needs for the tested versus the untested members. And I think that there's a tension. It can be handled, it can be managed. We've been managing it for many years. But implicit in the way you presented this document is that you're just going to go ahead and we're going to do these things and we're going to solve these problems. And there's a give and take. You know, I completely supported franchising, so fully franchising associates. It didn't really cost RPTs anything. But when you start to do things where RPTs may think that they are losing some stature or status, we may have pushback. And this is a very careful balance. And what I listened to when I listened to this report, it was like the wishful thinking that you're just going to leapfrog this tension. I don't think you will.
Two things real quick. All the long-range planning documents under the actual PTG.org site, forms and documents, scroll down, long-range planning documents, you can find all of this posted there for those of you not on PTGL. To comment to Carl's statement there, this is a living document. We don't expect this to solve the world. This is baby steps, and at this moment, and will constantly be reevaluated. Our problems are never going to go away, but this is a place to start and see what the outcome is and readjust and continue forward. Living document.
Melinda Powell, Twin Cities chapter. I just have a question, since we are eliminating associate. I am assuming that the former associate can now advertise as members of the Piano Technicians Guild and does not need to include associate.
That is correct. They are a member of the PTG.
Kathy Smith, LA chapter alternate. We just had a microcosm in the last month out in the LA area of everything we're talking about right here. The trying to get the orange line to go up and trying to get the members to upgrade. We gave a Southern California Area Exam Board had an exam weekend, and we give exams to 7 local chapters, and we give exams to people from Hawaii, Montana, Alaska, Nevada, Arizona. But we had all of 2 technical exams and 1 tuning exam, and we give exams twice a year. So we were discouraged in that we had so few people, and that was actually not a small weekend for us. We've had so little activity, it's kind of surprising. But we did create 2 new RPTs. So that was the downer. The upside was that David and I gave to 2 local large chapters, we gave a technical session on the 2 regulation portions of the tech exam. And they had much larger numbers than normal at both of those chapters, and there were more younger or people who were looking to upgrade. So we saw very few exams, but then we saw 2 chapters that were full of people who were anxious to learn, and got a lot of comments from them. We had people drive 2 hours to come to one of those meetings. So the activity is out there. The want and the need is out there, so that's the upside.
Bill Schultz, Monona Valley chapter, and Kathy, one of those new RPGs, called me right away. And that was one of his most elated moments in life. It was so exciting for him. And it was so exciting to be a part of his learning. And I'd like to say that, to the point I wanted to make, which isn't unrelated, which is we have a lack of self-awareness here in our organization. My alternate, who is the incoming chapter president, who is an associate member, told me a moment ago that we need to demystify the RPT. I would like to suggest that one way to demystify the RPT is to increase our membership's technical knowledge-based awareness. And I think the first step for that, and don't groan, is to offer the written test to every incoming member. How you do it, what you do with it, whether it's private information, whatever happens, start the self-awareness the moment they enter the organization, so that they are aware of their relationship to at least the knowledge base that they're headed towards. At least the knowledge base. I remember a conversation I had with someone in my chapter many, many years ago who said, I don't need the RPT. You guys are a bunch of idiots. I'm a rebuilder. And the RPTs are stupid. And then this person took the test and failed. They did, of course, pass later and became an RPT. We need a higher degree of self-awareness. And then I'll suggest one more thing as I go, which is the tension, to carry on Carl's point, between associate and RPT, regardless of what you call it, the member is good for us. It's good for us. It's not something to be afraid of. In the long-range plan, I still see fear of that tension. The tension is good for us. Thank you.
Raise the mic up. Raise the mic.
Andy McMorrow, Seattle chapter. If you're going to be an RPT or a piano technician, you have to have customers. It doesn't make any sense to be a member of the guild if you can't get customers. I mean, very few people want that. And so that means you're going to do business. And you have to look and say, well, where are piano service? Who's paying money for piano service? And it's not the casual piano owner. The serious piano owner will pay serious money to have their piano done. And the casual piano owner has the options of the digital piano now. The market has shifted, and there's nothing we can do about that. But we can adapt. And we can adapt to it to take advantage of it, and it involves our expertise and our standards. If we push more of the information of how to satisfy those serious pianists, if we make that more of a focus of how you're going to function as a piano technician, and that enables them to have the justification for becoming RPT when that market is there. So I think PTG needs to focus on the people who spend money getting piano serviced and have the membership ready to do that task. Thank you.
Bill Monroe, Madison Chapter. I wanted to respond to a couple of points in the long-range planning presentation. Strategic initiatives for marketing and outreach, and strategic initiative 2, membership engagement and equity. From the PTG website, our mission is to promote the highest possible standards of piano service by providing members with opportunities for professional development, by recognizing technical competence through examinations, and by advancing the interests of its members. I agree with what's been said before. We have a good mission statement. And I think that before making significant changes to membership or certification practices and requirements, it behooves us to ensure we're acting in support of our mission. If our mission is indeed to promote the highest possible standards of piano service, we do ourselves a disservice by removing or diminishing requirements of RPT certification in any way. If we're concerned about the number of RPTs in the organization, we might consider that a less meaningful certification may have the unintended consequence of removing the value of that certification. An alternative to making RPT easier to achieve would be to continue to pursue the highest possible standards of piano service. Elevating the status of RPT and making the certification more worthy of achieving will provide a greater incentive to members upgrading to RPT, and ultimately national and worldwide recognition that RPT means something more. That while RPT status may not be easy to achieve, it is worth achieving. Suggesting that the act of writing a check and becoming a member of PTG is equivalent to being an expert in the field of piano technology is an exercise in self-deception, and it's a tremendous disservice to those that have worked hard to actually be an expert in this field. While I was adamantly in favor of the then associate voting rights, and I continue to support that change to acknowledge the value of our non-RPT members and ensure that these members have a voice in the organization, it is a very different exercise to suggest that RPT certification should be made easy to achieve, or that by virtue of simply being a PTG member, an individual is instantly an expert, especially as it concerns how we market to the world our expertise. Amen.
So to respond to that directly, there is no movement to change the RPT exams at this time. So no discussion on that outside of PTGL and some of these other posts. As far as promoting PTG members as the experts, that was part of the discussion. That is nowhere in one of the goals of the strategic plan. So just keep that in the back of your head. That was part of the discussion, but it is not in the actual plan.
John Farrell, Baltimore chapter. Appreciate all the work of the board on this long-range planning. The Baltimore chapter has some concerns that were just previously shared by the person who was here with the microphone before me. RPT is our product. That's all we promote throughout our communities worldwide. I remember getting just a few days ago this announcement from Highland that was talking about how proud they were to have a brand new RPT head of the voicing department at Highland. Vice President Adams was pictured with that. This is who we are. This is what we need to promote worldwide. associate status helps to give RPT a distinction that a member does not offer the same distinction to make RPT and a goal to strive for. I know that when I became an RPT a few years ago, it was an extremely proud moment for me, and I could relate to that feeling that was shared previously. We would like to see, the Baltimore chapter would like to see associate be recognized as a technical achievement, and members could then be everybody else. And any watering down of our requirements to become an RPT, we strongly oppose. We need to stand up for the quality that we are and strive to become. Thank you.
Paul Ray, Pomona Valley chapter. As a manufacturer, I'm head of technical services. I answer all the questions that come in about the pianos from technicians all over the United States and frankly all over the world. If there's any question about the importance of continuing education and RPT certification, just spend the day at my desk. And you realize the importance of it. As a manufacturer, I ask that you continue with the continuing education and certification of people coming up through our ranks.
I'm Michael Tokini, Fort Worth chapter. This is a minor point, but I do think it puts downward pressure on both membership and RPTs, and that is if an RPT drops out for whatever reason and then decides to rejoin, my understanding is he or she just retake the test.
That is incorrect.
Is that incorrect? Okay, am I correct that it used to be that way? Okay, I stand corrected, and thank you.
Matthew Spalding, Eugene chapter. I would like clarification. First of all, the strategic plan is awesome. How are we going to, where in the subcommittees or special committees and task groups does this body continue with this process yearly? Are we going to set together a subcommittee, or am I standing here ready to make a motion for that?
Committee staffing will be held later in the week with the board of directors meetings. This process will be directed by the board for obvious reasons. Some of our committees will take part of these goals. Other committees may or may not have to be formed. Again, this is we're working towards this. Our current committees will be tasked with many of these items. And we will let you know exactly how it's going to turn out, because we're still figuring it out as well.
And so that means currently standing at the VP and board level?
Correct.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
Who will you be using PTGL to communicate with about how this is being done?
Communicate what exactly, Ed?
The process that you're developing.
We'll push out information as it becomes available. We have a committee structure now. Many of these tasks fit within that committee structure. When the new committees are appointed here at Post Council and their charges are developed and published, that'll all go out on the PTG website itself, like committee stuff does every year.
Part of our plan for this plan is to actually have conference calls on a quarterly basis to assess how things are going and make minor tweaks as needed. And it is also my intention and the board's intention to have long-range planning at the winter board meeting on a regular basis, if not annually, certainly more frequently than we ever had in the past.
Debbie Diorio, president of the Chicago chapter. I noticed up there you said decrease fear of the test. What does that exactly mean? It's a little fear taking a test isn't a bad thing.
Again, that was a discussion point. It's not in the long-range plan. So the discussion around it was so many so many members are scared to death of it, and it was discussion about education, encouragement, so on and so forth. It doesn't appear within the long-range plan that we're doing anything about that. It was just a topic of discussion.
John Becker, and Doug from the Washington DC chapter. Our chapter is very much in support of the status quo of all the tests that we have. I'm an associate, by the way. And I'd also like to express my thanks to the board.
I need more, you remember.
I'm sorry, excuse me, that was on the top of my head right when I started. So I am a non-RPT member at the present time. Thank you for that correction. One thing that I noticed here was we're in the middle of managing change, and there's a lot of moving parts to that change. So we are bricks and mortar at the moment. We want to change to be more Amazon. We need to be in the online sphere. We need to be putting out a voice of the professional quality that this organization stands for. And like all the YouTube videos that are going out there, people are probably not actually experts. So somehow we need to think about that as part of our role forward. That's pretty much it.
So just to put something out, again, there are no board level discussions of doing anything with the exams at this time.
The other thing I'd like to interject is that there is a brand new committee that was just formulated called the Education Committee. It has yet to be staffed. We are in the process of working on what charges will be needed for that committee, but the overarching idea for that committee is to act as a clearinghouse for all educational resources, and that would include everything you can possibly imagine, including online education, webinars, you name it. We're just going to have this committee begin to coalesce everything into a core curriculum for piano technology in any form and every form that's available. So that's the overarching idea of what this brand new committee is about to do.
Just to quickly expand on what Mr. Adams just said, this committee won't be doing the work themselves. The education committee will almost function kind of like the high level of ETS functions. You have the education committee is going to oversee these other committees. They're going to be the coordination effort of online stuff, a little bit of ETSC, the institute, all of this. They will be the umbrella to make sure all our efforts are being combined and there's not duplication, so on and so forth. They're going to be the coordinators of our educational efforts. Not necessarily they are the ones coming up with this stuff. They're going to coordinate it all.
Ashley Turner, alternate delegate for the DC chapter. Thank you very much for this overview. Very wonderful. This looks like a lot of work and really valuable. And I appreciate that we hired an organization to help us do this. I really believe in that, experts who know what they're doing. And thank you to the board for all of their countless volunteer hours, hundreds and hundreds of volunteer hours. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the home office as well. Good, I'm glad everybody agrees with me on that. You guys are the best, and thank you very much to the home office as well for all of your countless hours. We can be overly inclusive as an organization. Inclusiveness is wonderful, but you can get everyone's opinions and never get anywhere because you're getting everyone's opinions. So I appreciate that we're utilizing task forces and things like that to make these decisions. I don't think that the board can really make all of these decisions and include everyone. Also, I don't think that numbers of members is what we need to be focused on. We need to be focused on quality rather than quantity, unless quantity means survival. But other than survival, let's forget about quantity and let's focus on quality. And I also believe that if we need to be thinking about the future of our organization, we need to be utilizing the thoughts of younger members and what their ideas are, because they think differently. And we need to really, we can't be forcing our old ideas onto newer members, or younger members as well. Thanks.
Communication is always going to be one of our problems, and I would like to suggest that the board, I don't know if this has to be done officially, but perhaps we can promote this, that the chapter elects a delegate to come to council. In my experience, the delegate is elected and does his job or her job for 2 days, and then maybe gives a presentation to the chapter in August or September. I would like to suggest that maybe we make the delegate an official position that is elected for a full year, and that the board communicates with the delegate then communicates with the chapter, and let it go back and forth. Instead of just PTGL, which is a great thing, but not everybody's on that, and it's really unofficial. I think the delegates acting as the go-between between the chapter and the board, since we don't have this kind of activity anymore. I think that would be a very good thing to keep the communication going. Thank you so much.
Jermaine Barnes, the Sacramento Valley chapter, and this goes somewhat to what Wim said. There's been a lot of talk on PTGL about lack of communication, and I think it would be beneficial to consider the board pushing more information to the general membership, which would in turn encourage general membership to participate in PTGL. And quite frankly, I was thrilled to get a message from the president, even though it was a warning, oh, chapter members can't act on their own, which was a worthy notice, but I was also thrilled to be getting a notification, you know, as a general member. And there's been talk about, well, there should have been more advance notice for council meeting, like this report, for example. But my only recommendation is I would like to see more direct communication to general membership, like, hey, this is happening in the board. If you want to learn more, go to PTGL and participate. Thank you.
If I could just comment briefly on communication. You've seen me pop up a lot on PTGL talking about this. So some of the ways we communicate right now is the leader letters are sent out roughly quarterly. The RPP newsletters are sent out a couple times a year. The presidential messages come out on an as-needed basis. Most of us participate on PTGL in some way or form. As far as people wanting to know what is the board doing, we only meet twice a year physically. And once in a while we do a conference call. So people, what is the board doing? Most of the time, other than just admin stuff, nothing. We are doing nothing. It's all being done behind the scenes. So when you want to know what's going on, nothing has changed until we actually meet. We might be working on projects, but we can't really speak to those until it becomes official, because until then it's conjecture. So when you want to know what are we doing, a lot of times the answer is, well, nothing official. We can't speak to it until it's been voted on, because otherwise it's just guesswork and it'll ignite firestorms, because it hasn't happened yet. I can't tell you what hasn't happened yet. Just keep that in mind. We only meet a couple times a year, please. Thank you.
Chris LeVar, Northeast Regional Vice President. This graph is not the long-range planning. This was one piece of completing long-range planning. Is it possible to bring up the 6 initiatives? Most of the comments that have been made have not pertained to long-range planning. And Mark, I sent it to you in another document.
Correct. My computer can't hook up, so bear with me. We can in a couple minutes.
Okay, thank you. That way we can actually talk about the long-range plan, which is what this time has been allotted for.
I'm David Pritchard with the Roanoke chapter. I just thought maybe sharing my story would just help with some ideas on how to get some new members. In 1999, I decided I wanted to be a piano technician living in the middle of nowhere in the panhandle of Nebraska. There were no piano technicians in the area. Found the Randy Potter course. online. I could actually go online 20 years ago, but it was VHS tapes and everything. But I heard about PTG because of that course. I contacted PTG. I got a magazine in the journal in the mail and a little bit of information. But I never got contacted by the local chapter ever. Now, my local chapter was meeting 6.5-hour drive from me in Lincoln, Nebraska, so it was really unreasonable for me to go to meetings. I wasn't told maybe that I could go to the Fort Collins chapter, which was a little over 2 hours away. But there just was no communication there. I know even in our own area, there are other piano technicians in the area that aren't members of the PTG, and maybe they're like me, just nobody told them about it. Nobody pursued them. I would have easily been recruitable as a member if I had been told what the PTG was about and how I could participate, not even living near a chapter. I love what the Charlotte chapter is doing with their online technicals, and if there was some way, there's got to be thousands of potential PTG members that just don't live near a chapter that could participate online, that could really, really increase the membership that way. So anything we can do to, the local chapter would reach out to people, especially if they've contacted the PTG in the past. They could be given, that name could be given to the local chapter. Maybe it is, and maybe the chapter just dropped the ball there. But I can see a lot of new membership that way. Thanks.
I can just let you know that, I don't know for how long this has been policy and procedure, but certainly every time, it's my understanding that the Home Office sends out a welcome package to any new applicant to the organization, and does try and let them know where the nearest chapters are and what chapters they might be eligible to be involved with. So there's a lot of information should have been given to you when you first joined the organization. And that was not the case. I'd like to hear about it, but that is our standard procedure.
Randy Hansen, Central Washington State Chapter. My comment is exactly what Sergio brought up about how are we reaching our brand new members with a welcome packet from the local chapter or from the main organization as to how we can bring their excitement to the piano technology field right away. If someone's coming just interested, how can we come to bring them to love this trade? And another previous gentleman has spoken about making the written test available as soon as someone becomes a member, or even making it possible for them to see that. And I would like to echo that possibility, because if a member can pass the written test, there's a complete success. And that's what we want with members, is for them to feel success, that the road to becoming an RPT is achievable, and it is very rewarding.
Hello, I'm Greg Chang with the Southeastern Pennsylvania chapter, and I just have a quick question. Where in the long-range planning does it take into account the rest of the piano industry as a whole? The reason I ask this question is because through a quick Google search, I found a graph that looks surprisingly similar to 2005 to current of our membership base based on piano sales. It looks almost exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
So taking that into account might help us generate some ideas as to how to keep this organization moving forward.
My only comment there is that it speaks to what Carl Lieberman said earlier in the forum, that there are external forces of which we have no control.
Elizabeth Ward, Oklahoma chapter. You're sending out new member packets is great, but they have to apply for membership first. They have to know we exist, and I think that was Mr. Pritchard's point. Where did you find out about PTG? I found out about it in 1960 when my dad joined.
Not
But,
fair.
you know, not everybody gets to do that.
Part of what we do have, when we reach out to non-members, is a prospect packet. And the prospect packet has samples of some of our merchandise. It also has a benefit sheet in it. It has chapters that, or tells them how to go online to find the local chapters. But the prospect packet is how we reach out to the non-members.
If I could just comment real quick on new members and prospective members, do you know what the number one marketing tool should be for potential members?
Us.
It's us. Yeah. We know the technicians in our area. We know the new people in our area, unless they happen to be going to North Bennett Street and you haven't met them yet because they're still in school. So the number one tool should be us talking to these people going, hey, why aren't you a member? This is what we do. Come to a meeting. It doesn't cost a dime for them to come to a chapter meeting. Market ourselves. We are the best resource because it's face-to-face. At the same time, to answer Greg's question real quick, the corporate partnership part of the long-range plan is indeed working with the manufacturers and dealers and such, trying to get everyone as a group to push together, because we are all in this together. As we rise and fall, so do the manufacturers, so on and so forth. So that was the intent of that portion.
Also, there are some membership dollars that are associated with online searches in various browsers, so that if somebody's looking for a piano tuner or types in the word piano, all of a sudden a little box pops up. Piano Technicians Guild. Find a technician. This is starting to happen more and more, and it brings them into the awareness that there is this organization and it exists. So that's one avenue that we've established quite a number of years ago.
Elliot, the Phoenix chapter. I had a question about, we're all businessmen and women. I had a question about this proposed CRM improvement. I didn't even know we had a CRM, a customer relation management program. If it exists, or can you give me a vision on what that might be? Because as individual piano technicians in business, this would be a very valuable tool.
Well, for the technician, it's going to be different than for PTG, for the home office use. For us, when we're talking about CRMs, we're talking about a membership database. Has all the information from all of our members and all of the prospects. And every time that somebody signs up to go on to Piano Tech on my PTG, it creates a profile that is stored then. For the technician,
Oh, I thought it was for the technicians. But
right, and that's different, but talk to the guy behind
I would like to speak to Greg's comment about the parallel between the graph of piano sales and the statement that there are things that are outside of our control. Yes, there are. I think what is in the Piano Technician's Guild control, though, is helping me as the individual business owner to strategically think about penetrating a local economy of, musicians. And I received nothing from the PTG on that. I've had to go outside of the PTG as a business owner to get all that information for my company as I built it. And so from a local chapter standpoint and from a corporate governance standpoint, the education piece is both technical as well as business development. And I think some resources, not all or most, but some should be allocated in that direction as well. Just to be able to reach out to people and say, I understand that this is the culture we live in, but this is how you still penetrate, and this is how you still get movement in these areas. And there's things I've done in my company that have succeeded in that, but I think the PTG should be doing more for its members on that front.
Funny you mentioned that, Tim. So part of the education portion is we need technical education, yes, that's what we're here for, but we need to do a lot better job. We are terrible businessmen as a whole, so we need to step up our efforts for business education as well.
Larry Messerly, Wisconsin chapter. I'd like to address number 3, building chapters, which is done by getting new members. Now, to make a short story long, years ago I was at South Bay chapter, and we had a 16-year-old come in with his mother wanting to find out about the piano technician's guild. He had been told by his school guidance counselor not to be a piano technician because it was a dying field. Now, at my own chapter in Wisconsin, where the heck is that from? I have taken the PTG's brochure on considering a career in piano technology and given it to each of our members that tunes pianos in schools, high schools, colleges, to please get this to the music instructors and get it to the guidance counselors if at all possible.
Any further discussion on the long-range plan at this point? Hearing none, we can move on to any other topics that you wish to discuss in this open forum.
For the Eugene chapter, I'd like clarification on the committees and the specific committees, what the protocol is for getting information to a committee. I entered into a committee this last season. I was grateful to be a supporting part of the team, and the group of folks that were there representing this room, they worked hard on our targets. That was the marketing committee specifically. And what kind of happened was a lamb bash of this is what the board told us we're supposed to do, and everything else didn't get addressed in the agenda. And I'd like to kind of know what the procedure for communication and how a committee generates that information. I'm happy to stay on target, but I was signed up for the wrong information.
Let me understand your question. You want to know how to contact the committees, or?
No, I was on the marketing committee specifically for PTG and RPT emblem.
Okay.
And in the conversation for, it was originally discussed as the marketing group. And in the process of trying to discuss what marketing for PTG would look like, opening with that, we're trying to open doors and get more information out to members, communicate with non-musicians, or musicians who are interested in becoming part of the Piano Technicians Guild, the marketing component. And my question is, how do we, I thought this was a brainstorming committee with communication between the groups in this committee, and what it was the board had guided a person on my understanding of this. The board had guided a person to say this is what the committee is going to be talking about, and went right down that line. Other information in the marketing subcommittee got shoved aside. I'm trying to understand the protocol.
I can speak now more directly to what your concern is.
Thank you.
Basically, all our committees, during our committee staffing at post-council board meetings, all of those committees are, first of all, staffed. And second of all, we go over what the board considers appropriate charges for what the committees are supposed to do. That does not preclude the committee from pursuing other avenues. It's not against the rules for you guys to expand on those charges and go in a slightly different direction or in a broader direction. That's at your discretion, and of course, it's usually guided by the chair. But communicating that to the chair is the way to go. And if you're not satisfied with the response, you can certainly reach out to your RVP with your concerns. That would be the proper procedure.
Excellent. Thank you for your response.
Ed McMorrow, Seattle chapter. Now that we have, I've talked to some of the board members about this, and But now that we have the primary board governance, the issue of when there is a divided vote for an issue before the board, and it's not recorded so that we know how each board member voted, I think that's a serious problem for us. We need to know how the board is voting when they vote divided. And the reason, the simplest and irreducible, irrefutable reason is that without knowing this, you expose yourselves to lies about what you did. And that will just really tear us apart. We need to have this openness.
We've had this discussion. We are aware of the fact that people were looking for more details in the minutes. The purpose of minutes is not a live streaming of all the events that occurred in the boardroom. It is not to have everyone be part and parcel of the sausage making, if you will. That is not the purpose of minutes by definition. First of all, I can say that in the years I've been on the board, there have been very few issues that have been contested with a close vote. We spend a great deal of time discussing the various proposals and motions that are before us, and once a decision is reached, many times it is a unanimous vote. There is no reason whatsoever why, if you have a concern about who it was that voted in the negative, there is no reason why you can't contact the board, you can't contact the individual, and we will be open and honest. There's nothing hidden. It's not a secret cabal. We are members of this organization and more than willing to share the background. Part of the difficulty in having minutes be expanded to what they should not be is you don't really get context whatsoever. And there's a lot of discussion that goes into those decisions. So it really would have to be addressed more on an individual basis than part of minutes. It just doesn't belong there.
Carl Lieberman, South Bay. I'd like to speak towards communication with the board, with the membership. I supported the move to board-driven organization. We can be more nimble, we can do things. But it's really important to build a consensus for things. Like, for instance, on the associate voting, it was well debated. I know the whole procedural issue that came up, but there really was a groundswell of support within the organization for this change. I've just learned, and I was aware of, because I know some of you people, but the idea of calling everyone members, okay? Most people are hearing this for the first time, that the board has made this change. I think this is a pretty significant change. I'm not casting aspersions one way or the other, but it was never presented, it was never kind of debated, it was never really brought before the membership. And it may be very consequential, the idea of promoting the guild as opposed to promoting the RPTs. There's lots of fallout from something like this. And I think it's really important. Democracy is a disinfectant. If we want to cut out people throwing stones and being upset, it's good to bring people along and to convince them. And I think it's surprising to me that I think this was a consequential decision that you guys made, but there was no prior warning or debate about it. I think you should make more of an effort to kind of bring the membership along before things are done.
Bill Schultz from Mono Valley Chapter. Along the lines of the importance of procedures, I'll remind you, you don't need reminding, of the position I took at this microphone last year, which in the comment I made, I think I said something that was a quote from the impact of this governance change, which was the choice council has been reduced to throw the bumps out. So they immediately, you guys, put me on the nominating committee. Well, there's something wrong with that, right? I'm up here saying you should throw the bums out, and you put me on the nominating committee. Well, I do want to make a procedural point, though. I appreciate the opportunity for service, but you did follow through by putting me on a digest form. So I got the message late and participated late until I figured out what was going on. No one on any of these committees, but especially on the nominating committee, should be in a digest form. These should be mandatory active participation. I consider that particular problem an essential participative problem, procedural problem, that goes to the larger issue that you addressed, Carl. We should not permit members of committees, especially one as important as the nominating committee, to be at some different level of participation. I'd be happy to talk about that privately later. Thank you.
Thank you, Knowles, from Full Chapter. I wanted to speak to Ed's comment. Again, for the last several years, the comment has been made, if you disagree with the board's decision, then vote those individuals out. But if we don't know who the dissenting vote is, then how can we ever do that? And that's where I feel like our desire is not to know the entire discussion. Our desire is simply to know if it's not a unanimous vote, which is it our RVP we need to talk to? Is it one of the executive members we need to talk to? Who is it we need to talk to express our concerns? And we can't know that information is not disclosed to us. Because I can call my RVP and ask him who was the dissenting vote. But it just feels like an awkward step when we can talk directly to the individual. If that simple, and I know, I've read the minutes, there's examples where people chose to have their name listed, and they wanted it to be known. But again, because the board now is in governance, and because our only recourse is our voting rights to elect the board, I feel like we really do need to know when there is a dissension. Not just a close vote, but when there is a dissension, who it is that, and which region it is that has a differing opinion. Because it very well may be that regional vice president voted that way because that's what he heard from his region, and that's great. It's not my region. I don't need to fuss at them about it. But I do want to be able to know what's going on with the executive board and their votes, and if it's one way or the other.
Standard practice is not to record every vote. And if somebody makes a point to say, I want it recorded, we do. The easiest way to deal with this is ask the secretary treasurer or the chair or any of us. There's no secrets. I get messages all the time. No problem. We will tell you. Just ask.
Write down. So we can just look it up. Why should we have to ask?
Well, step up to the microphone, please, Ed, if you want to.
Patrick Drain, Boston chapter. This is the only time that we are able to discuss the handout. Report of the Presidential Task Group, other side, PTG, organizational policy concerning signing signs. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. I certainly hope that we have more than the remainder of 10 minutes to discuss this issue. The survey, well intentioned, but really the only survey of how we're going to proceed, or our assessment of how the board has proceeded, is election of our officials. This is nice, but it's a little bit of information. We discussed it very thoroughly several times in our chapter before the survey form, and we feel very strongly about this kind of issue. The pronouncements from the board, one question that I have is, I didn't have any problem with the 6-page letter that eventually was released from McCann. I understand there has been some communication from the lawyer to you. I really want to read that. I want to know exactly what the lawyer said, because it seems to be turning completely around from what he expressed earlier. We don't need costly litigation. We need to file a complaint with the FTC. Go to the FTC website, and it's like one of the first things. Do you have a complaint? We assume that you're our representatives and you would do that for us. I think I need a new blood pressure medication because this gets me really, really upset. And I'm appalled at the last sentence. PTG cannot allow further discussion of legal actions, boycotts. You guys brought that up in that flyer, in that questionnaire that you sent around. If you didn't want to talk about that, you shouldn't have put it in there. I certainly do not agree to any boycott. Go to the FTC.
Well, I'm on that issue, I agree with you, but I wanted to go back to the simple, when you have a vote in the board, and one or more of you have a difference in the vote, there is no excuse not to record that, who voted how. That is so simple, and we shouldn't have to ask you for that. Just put it there in the record so we can just look it up. And if we have questions, we will ask. It sets up, I see this wall you're trying to draw around this, and it's bizarre. It's just bizarre.
You're absolutely correct, Ed. It is very simple, but it is not standard practice.
Make it so.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not our standard practice, I should say. It is standard practice for governance. That is not normal. We are trying to keep things as normal as possible. It's that simple.
What are you talking about?
When votes are taken, for example, we'll go to US Congress, for example. It's not broken down of who voted what unless you dig deeper. It's not in the minutes. It will just be listed of yay, nay, abstention, period. You don't see names. It is not standard practice for that to be done. Anywhere. That's all we're saying.
That's not true. Well, we can, when there's a dissension.
That's not true.
Yeah, this is not true.
Daniel DiBiasio, New York City chapter. I understand the passion surrounding the Steinway issue, but I have to voice my disagreement with the gentleman who spoke before. Filing a complaint with the FDC against one of the leading manufacturers of pianos in this country kind of seems like shooting our organization in the foot. I work for Steinway. I'm an employee full-time in concert services, and I'm not the only member of the Piano Technicians Guild who works for Steinway. I know that if the Piano Technicians Guild were to put itself in a position that put itself at odds with Steinway and Sons, I anticipate we would lose a lot of membership and lose a lot of interest and potential membership. If this had happened before I had joined the organization, I would not have joined the organization. So when we talk about using the guild and our collective power to support some individuals' interests over others, I think that we're setting ourselves up to divide this organization further, and we might see a drastic dip in that graph that we saw earlier. That's my anticipation.
Ed Sutton, Research Triangle Park Chapter. Going to our other topic of discussion here, I'd like to try offering a rather innocent, childish possibility. Suppose we had a new tradition. The regional vice presidents get to send out their letters reporting to the membership what they've done. How about in every letter, after board meetings, the regional vice president has a little column that says, "This is how I voted on your behalf and why," in which they directly communicate to the membership membership why they did what they did. Would that help us to know whether or not we like what our RVP is doing? I'd like to see that. I hope maybe at least one RVP in the room has heard what I said and will put it in his next letter. Thank you.
Bruce Dornfeld, North Shore Chapter. It's been about 30 years since I've served on the PTG board, but at that time, the records did indicate who voted for what. And I understand you're saying it's not standard procedure now, but that doesn't mean it's illegal for us to do so. And I think it would be very helpful information for our membership for that to be there. I understand that there's a potential for misinterpreting the information. That seems to be our biggest concern. But if we're not getting information that can be interpreted or misinterpreted, it makes it harder for us to come to any reasonable decision. Coming into this council session, we have a contested election for the president. The general membership did not receive any printed information that this was going to happen, much less any information about the differences that these two people have coming into this office. It makes it really hard for us to have the chapter's input on these things if chapter members don't have access to this. And I don't mean access by going to this website. Information this basic needs to be sent out to all members. Thank you.
I will not disagree in any way or form that if the membership want to know how the votes were gotten, that they should. The minutes are not the place to do it. So a discussion can be had of alternatives, but minutes are not the place to do it. That is all we've been saying all along. It is not practice. But can it be done in another mechanism? You betcha. Just where do we want to do that discussion? Needs to be
How
had.
did they do it before that way? You just said they did it before.
I hear something in the back. I do believe speakers are at their microphones are at the front for commentary. So enough said.
You got one all the time.
To speak to something that Bruce Dornfield just mentioned, yes, there is a contested election for the presidency, and yes, I have communicated my campaign literature by email, including 6 letters of endorsement. That was sent out at great personal expense of my time in compiling a list of all of the emails for all of our chapter presidents, all of our chapter vice presidents, and sent that out on 2 separate occasions.
So I kind of had to cut off our vice president. I apologize, but he, being one of the candidates, can't really talk about his efforts because that would not be fair to the other candidate. Long story short, any candidate's efforts as a candidate have to be done as a candidate, not from us as an organization. That is an individual effort, not for us as a whole, for the board or the PTG particularly. The only official stuff that will come from the organization is the report of the nominating committee.
Bill Schultz, one about the chapter. I'd like to briefly speak to 2 issues. One, standard practice, and the other, this time wage issue. Standard practice is also probably not a council for an association. Right? In other words, what we're doing today is not standard practice. What we're doing, we demand a higher degree of participation in our organization by virtue of having a council with delegates from chapters that come together and spend 2 days together. So I think sometimes standard practice has to be thought of in the context of our organization and our own practices. And this council asking for more information might be an appropriate thing. Standard practice isn't always the right answer. And maybe we should think about that. I'd like to squeeze in here real quick though. I wish there was some way of being able to talk about the question of politicking, of getting the word out by those
who want to get the word out who are running for office. And I know Paul can't talk anymore about it. The issues he'd like to raise are important issues. I wish there was some way we could talk about that. About Steinway, I am on both sides. Mr. de Blasio, where are you? I have never worked for Steinway, but I have almost all my career done CNA work for Steinway and have my heart's there. And my heart is also as an independent piano technician. Not only that, but as I have done Steinway history and research, as I have worked with the company, as I have worked with many, many other people outside of the PTG who have worked with Steinway, including in history, the American Musical Instrument Society, conservators, appraisers, all of these people have felt the force and weight of the monopolization of the company in our industry. That all was okay legally until now. Okay? That's about all I can say about this because I don't know where to go from here either. But I don't think we should just sit still and let this happen. This is a concerted effort of many decades that has come to this head. Thank you.
I just want to respond briefly to Bill's statement. As far as the board discussed this, I don't know how many hours we discussed this, all said and done. The final decision was unanimous. There was no dissension on this letter. We developed this letter as a group. But the board also did appoint, we have meetings scheduled with Steinway, and the board appointed the president and the vice president to continue this process. So it is not a matter of we are doing nothing. We are continuing, hopefully, polite and friendly discussion about this going forward. That is the plan at this time. Could that change going forward? Possibly, we don't know. But that is the plan, to continue this discussion with the president and vice president taking the forefront of that.
Kyoko Forest, Los Angeles chapter. I'd like to thank you for having the task force, and although the final outcome of the study means that we can't really do anything about it except to possibly discuss and keep the conversation going with Steinway. And I would probably not have the patience for it. I don't think it's going to change much. I don't think it's going to do anything. I think this has been going on for a very long time, especially with using original Steinway parts and going back over a decade ago with that. I do find that a lot of Steinway technicians are often not bullied, but often convinced that they must only work on Steinway. They can't make any critical comments. And I think it's important that they are here at PTG, at the convention, to be part of the larger group of technicians. So, my question was, Decals Unlimited was the sole company that was providing the decals, is that correct? Had they thought back or looked into FTC to look into this? I mean, without going to court, can an inquiry be made? Can they make an inquiry? Can the rebuilders make an inquiry as to whether or not this is legal and correct?
There is nothing preventing individuals from seeking legal counsel about this matter. What Decals Unlimited may or may not have done, we have no idea. That is their corporate decision. So, as far as they're concerned, what's been publicized so far, their license to reproduce the Steinway decals was revoked. So that is all that's in the public realm about that. Anything more, you would have to ask them. Just another quick commentary on our letter out there. That last sentence about discussion and that kind of stuff that cannot happen, that is due to antitrust concerns. The rules about a trade organization like ourselves are very, very strict, and they are ruthlessly enforced. So, unfortunately, when some of this discussion pops up about boycotts and all of that kind of stuff, we are treading on extremely dangerous ground. Just mention of it is enough to trigger a complaint. MTNA, as many of you are aware, ran into an antitrust issue a number of years ago. They are still paying for that. For 20 years, they are paying for that. So it's not that we're saying there can't be any discussion whatsoever, but we have to be very, 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 very careful about what that discussion is and where it goes. Because the minute any potential antitrust issues crop up, we have to hammer it flat. We do not want to go the way of MTNA. We don't have time, and we surely don't have the money. So it's not that we're saying it can't be discussed, but we have to be ruthlessly careful about where we go with this.
To further illustrate what we're discussing, from our antitrust policy, page 105, number 6, boycotts. Members cannot use trade associations as a tool to suppress competition by refusing to deal with non-members or refusing to deal with those who deal with non-members. Accordingly, PTG and its members must not enter into any agreement to refuse to deal with certain competitors, customers, or suppliers.
Carl Lieberman, South Bay. I want to go back to what I was talking about communication from the board with the membership, and however that happens. On this issue of the voting records, Mark said, well, it shouldn't be in the minutes. That's not the appropriate place for it. I think all of you are good people. None of you have anything to hide. You want full disclosure. You need to be much more proactive, communicating. In other words, if it's clear that there is a desire to have recorded votes, you need to find a workaround. If the right answer wasn't putting it in the minutes, find the right answer to share your votes with the membership. It is in your interest to kind of tamp down all sorts of rumor and innuendo to get real factual information out to the membership. And rather than thinking, being defensive and going, well, it shouldn't be in the minutes, that's just one step along the way. The answer is, where should it be? Because I think everyone should agree, would agree, that this is a public record. How everyone voted should be shared. Find a way to share it. Don't hide behind, well, the way that we normally would share it isn't the right way to share it. Find a way to share it.
Chris Brown.
Squeeze
Chris Brown, Boston chapter. The Steinway issue that we're having is a very emotional one for many people. I believe there is large common ground between the Steinway Company's interests and our interests as technicians and voters. And that should be, I encourage you to emphasize that and to point it out to them. We don't have the funds or the interest in having a fight. We would rather like to join forces for a more favorable outcome. And I'd like to point out that many of us have had long careers praising, admiring, studying Steinway products, maybe not their business procedures. The current approach is hostile. And I think that in good faith, we should point out that the flourishing of our rebuilding business, which by the way has come a long way in the 40 plus years that I've been in the business, and helps their marketplace for new pianos.
Reading directly from the board's response on this policy of Steinway, we talk in the next to the last paragraph that a meeting has been agreed to with a date yet to be determined. We believe this course of action has the best chance of encouraging Steinway to adopt policies that are beneficial to piano owners, technicians, and to Steinway. So Chris's point is our intention to bring us together.
Timothy Barnes, Charlotte chapter, I'd like to dovetail on what Carl was just saying. 2 years ago and a year ago when we shifted to the board governance system and we were working that out, to everybody in this room, it has meant that the chapter president The regional vice president and the board are incredibly important roles now. They are not seat warmers. We can no longer afford to put people in these positions who are not leaders and who are not leading and who are not passionate about pushing this organization forward in the way that is best for our membership, best for the country, well, not the country, but best for the broader membership around the country. And so when you are in caucuses today and when you are voting on these things, it is incredibly important. And I think what Carl's trying to say, and what we're trying to say, and what you hear loud and clear, is that when we shifted to this board governance, we expect more leadership from every single position here. And we agree, and I'm happy about a lot of the things that you're doing, and I can very quickly jump over to the con side and say, y'all are doing a pretty bad job still leading, and I'm giving you a lot of grace because this is all new, but I think we want to have you say, or hear us say, loud and clear, we need better, more consistent communication, and we need leadership from you on topics. And like Carl said, if we say something that's not in the normal realm of doing things, lead. That's what we want you to do. Lead, step out there, lead, help us, guide us. We want you to lead this organization so it improves and grows.
Ed McMorrow, Seattle chapter. If PTG were to file a request for an trade restraint with the FTC, that would not put us in a position of doing anything. That act itself is not an antitrust act on our part. That's simply exercising our rights. Just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that.
The board is well aware of that fact, and we voted the way we did, knowing that.
New topic, Matt Hirschfeld, PTG chapter. I really liked the conversation about the responsibility of the delegates. I'm not sure if this is the correct spot to put this, but I think I would like to consider us to make a motion, if necessary, that the delegate would serve as a liaison to the RVP at the chapter level. Maybe that needs to come from the chapters or an RF.
I will speak to this right this second. So I highly suggest those of you that would like something to be done different, speak with your RVP, who can then make an RFA to go to the board of directors and have it acted upon. That would be the proper channel for this to happen, in the simplest way. So we are meeting Saturday and Sunday, and part of Friday. So that could be taken up if you get it in the next few days.
All right, Pomona Valley. On the Steinway subject, I think Steinway's pretty much shot their missionaries. We're just going to have to let that play out and see how it comes out at the end.
Well said, Paul.
Is there any further discussion to be had within this open forum?
Any questions whatsoever, now's the time to ask. If it's like what color socks we're wearing, have at it.
Okay.
I'm wearing tacos to be specific, so it was not Tuesday, but a little levity was in order today.
Ricky Close, Forward Chapter. I actually just wanted to thank you all for being open to the idea, having this open forum for us to talk and ask our questions and discuss all this long-range planning before we elect our next board of officials. So thank you very much.
So since there's nobody at the microphone, I'm going to take a few minutes. You've heard us say the bylaws have been slightly revised. It's kind of an understatement. So restructured is another way to put it. So did any of you read my report? Okay, there's a few hands out there. It's more than I expected. So let me give a little background since most of you did not. A number of years, we've known our bylaws are a train wreck for a very long time. And a number of years ago, the board approached the PTG attorney and said, okay, our bylaws are a mess, what do we do about it? He eventually spit out a revised set of bylaws. Around that same time that process was happening, this whole governance change came to the forefront and it kind of got shoved off to the side. So that document still existed, but our bylaws changed dramatically in the meantime because the governance changed. Long story short, we decided it was a priority that this has to happen. Our bylaws are strangling us because every time we want to do anything, we have to change the bylaws. The bylaws were more of a policy and procedure manual than bylaws. So this process was begun to change it to the way it should be. This will be a continual process. It's definitely a lot better. We're finding a couple little hiccups here and there. So again, we'll see some continual changes, but it shouldn't be as extreme as we had in the past. So to give you a quick overview, the bylaws themselves have been cut down dramatically. Regulations and codes of its entirety has been moved to board policy, which part of this is now called organizational policy. Because it's not just the board, it's all of us. It is the whole organization. So I'm going to just kind of quickly go through and give some highlights of what some of the changes that were done. The non-franchise is now just a member, or excuse me, the former non-franchise, the former associate is now just a member. The honorary membership is gone. All the stuff that was basically policy, the nitty-gritty of how to do things, all of that is gone from the bylaws, other than elections. The genesis of this document came from Mike McCann, and there's certain things that have to be in bylaws. Those stayed there. Without the document right in front of you, it's very difficult, but this is just a quick overview. So all the specifics are gone, other than the stuff that the lawyer says has to be there. So anything about member identification, logo, and all that kind of stuff is all gone to the graphic standards manual, which is no longer attached to the bylaws. That is a separate document, so it can be changed by the board of directors. It is not tied into bylaws. The whole thing of regulations and codes, of being regulations and codes, but the same process has to be followed to change them as bylaws. That was kind of silly. It's like, why don't we call the whole thing bylaws then? Why is it different when it's essentially a second set of bylaws? That was silly. So, when regulations and codes were removed for simplicity's sake, and so everybody could easily understand it, at least at the beginning, regulations and codes were subtracted out, disattached from bylaws, and dropped wholesale into the organizational policy, kind of separate. The organizational policy really has two sections now, the former policy and regulations and codes, just so everyone could understand at the beginning of this process, where did it all go? So it's standalone within that document. In the future, that is going to be revised as well to make it one flowing document. But for now, for comfort's sake, so people wouldn't freak out, they can still find their favorite little sections easily. So it wasn't completely from whole cloth, for confusion's sake. Stuff was moved around. I'm just trying to find the highlights. So much was moved. I should have done it with a cheat sheet. I'm sorry. I didn't expect to be doing this presentation, but it seemed the right time to do it. A big problem within our bylaws and regulations was constant references within the document. Bylaw such and such, see this particular section. All of those references were removed. And I found a couple that I missed during this process, so I got to go back and change it a little bit again. But every time we made a change, it was good for convenience sake, because you look up something, oh, I got to see this section. But anytime we want to revise anything, it's a train wreck. Because you change this, okay, now I got to change that, now I got to change this, and you'd be going round and round and round and round and round. Those are all gone. Regions. Bear with me, please. All the job descriptions were updated. Those are still within bylaws for obvious reasons, but they were updated to what the lawyer suggested. There were a couple things, those of you who actually read your council book, the requirement for the definition of what the immediate past president does, that was built into the bylaws, and those two other bylaws proposals were standalone in case the bylaws revision did not pass. So that immediate past president is not a member of the board of directors any longer. He has the right to debate, and he has the right to be there, but he is not a member of the board of directors. So there were some issues with Illinois law around that whole thing that took us a little work through to deal with, but that is the case at this point. There was also a change to the roll call vote for election of officers, that it has to be chosen and moved to do so before announcement of any election results. So if we want to do a roll call vote, it has to happen at the beginning, not at the end when someone is dissatisfied with the results. All the committees are still as listed. The committee stuff has not changed. There is discussion about removing committees from the bylaws, getting them out other than the ones that are basic needs. The attorney spoke to this and said at the moment don't make any changes, but a lot of those committees don't need to be in bylaws other than obvious ones such as the bylaws committee, the nominating committee, things of that nature. So you will probably see some committees dropping from the bylaws in the future, but that is why. Do they really belong there? Not really, but for comfort-wise, for now, we can want to go completely hog wild. There was a section in regulations and codes that has been completely eliminated. The process for amending bylaws was in bylaws, because that makes sense. The process for amending bylaws was also in regulations. That's gone. Go figure. We just love to be specific. Actually, hold on just a minute. I'm going to go to my report where I think I summed it all up. I'm flipping through bylaws, and this is just silly. Another big change, which we thought was overdue, is the former bylaws talked about there had to be a minimum of 5 RPTs to form and maintain a chapter. That has been changed to 5 members total. So it should help with some of our chapter issues, because since the franchise was given to members, then there's no reason we have to have 5 RPTs to maintain a chapter. That just made sense. We already talked about removal of associate and going to members. Those are the only ones that popped right out in my report. So the best I can say is these things will go forward. There was nothing completely off the reservation other than the things I just told you about. It was getting the policy and procedure part out of that document. So at any point, I believe we're going to try to get that published as soon as we relatively can. Unfortunately, the attorney has to look at them first. But if you want discussion, see me anytime during the week and we can sit down with the actual document. I can give you an overview of it. So by all means, just come and see me and we can look at that. We'll publish it as soon as we can.
No discussion.
Have at it, discussion. I just was filling in the blank because we had time. So if you want to talk about anything, now's the time.
Mark Steiger from Cleveland chapter. Mark, would you clarify with the elimination of associates, the proper use of PTG logos?
Nothing with logos has changed, period. The graphic standards manual has not changed in the slightest. The same rules apply.
So only RPGs can use PTG logos?
At this time, that is correct.
Thank you.
Excuse me? Bill Schultz, Motor Valley chapter. Try to keep my comments limited here. This is short and surprising and quick. What extent was the bylaws committee involved in this process?
When this started, it was talk about turning it over to the bylaws committee, and that isn't really their role. When it was all said and done, Nathan Mills, the current chair, was given updates as this continued going through. When something would come up, he was notified, and as it was getting closer to completion, he was given copies of it as it was progressing. And then the bylaws committee had to review the entire thing before it could make its way to the board. So the normal process was followed in every way and form, and I kept them updated as much as I could.
Thank you, Mark. Also, it's my memory that it wasn't very many years ago that the bylaws committee and the board did a process that sounded astoundingly similar to what you just described. Are there folks here who can address what they've seen and how it compares to the changes? Or are we sort of rewriting the book without any history? And I'd like to hear folks who might have been involved in that. I understand Dale Probst and Israel Stein were involved in that leadership. And then before, because I probably should sit down, but I'd like you to answer that question after I sit down. And anyone else who can speak to the mic about that. And then finally, what happens with the council book of resolutions in this change?
Easiest thing to answer, council book of resolutions is still there, nothing has changed. So.
That's interesting.
That is still there. That is a separate document outside of bylaws. So, I think there's two parts to what you're referring to, Bill, with the change of bylaws. So they kind of happen right on top of each other. So the attorney created a set of bylaws, theoretical bylaws, saying this is what they should be. That never went anywhere because right around that same time, the governance change came to the forefront. And those bylaws were created, changing our current ones. Those were acted upon and we are where we are as of a few days ago. But those were still the overly complicated bylaws that had all the policy and procedure stuff built into it. So essentially what we did is we took the bylaws the attorney came up with, the simplified, and the current bylaws, because a bunch changed due to governance, and melded them together, getting rid of all the stuff from Mike McCann from years ago that no longer applied, putting the two together the way it should be, eliminating the stuff he said to eliminate, but having to have the new bylaw stuff in there. It was a very complicated, time-consuming process.
And I appreciate it, and I'm glad Mr. McCann was involved. I'd still love to hear from our sages who've been involved in this process in the past, as to if they've had a chance to read these bylaws, to weigh in.
We can close Fort Worth chapter. May I ask specific questions about this part? Okay. One of the questions I had, just in looking at what you were eliminating on just the table of contents, I noticed that classes of membership is still there. So we still have classes of membership even though we're all just members?
There are still two classes of membership. Nothing has changed as far as the structure, it's simply the name. Simply the name, that is it. They're not associate members, they are members. And then there are registered piano technicians. There are two classes of membership.
Okay.
If I can add, it kind of follows the MTNA model in that they're all members of that MTNA, but then some of them have gone on to be a certified teacher of music. So when you go to their website and look for a piano teacher, for instance, the first thing you're going to see in the list is all of those teachers within the organization that have that certification. And before their name is a very bright logo in like a lime green that indicates that they're a certified teacher of music. And you scroll down the list, and then all of a sudden that bright green logo disappears, and now you have the rest of the members that are not certified. So basically, we're in a similar model now.
Honorary members did disappear, but like I said earlier, we had 0, so we didn't lose anything.
Next question would be, I noticed that you eliminated the principles right after the mission. I just wondered about that.
If you look at the strike through on the table of contents, that was a oops. The mission is still there, and it's.
I know the mission is the principles have been.
The principles are in policies at this point, because the principles can change over time. The mission tends to stay the same. The principles theoretically could change over time. So the mission is in bylaws. The principles are in procedures, policies and procedures.
Okay, so will there be a downloadable printable version of the organizational policy that you're talking about now? Because
yes,
it's kind of new to us. Okay, I guess then would you say that most of the stuff that was struck out as far as membership dues, publication objectives, chapter officers, A lot of the strikers that I'm looking at, are those just going to be relocated? They're not necessarily going away, being deleted. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
99% of what is struck through on bylaws is dumped into procedures, organizational policies, excuse me. So 90% of it is there. I'm flipping to the back. If you go to, I'm assuming,
Suffice to say that if it's been struck through, it's been relocated, not deleted.
a little bit has been deleted, the stuff that no longer apply, but 99% of it is dumped into procedures, policies, organizational policies.
Okay, thank you.
Bruce Dornfeld, North Shore Chapter. Most of us in this room have been involved with changing bylaws, either here or at the chapter level or on the bylaws committee over these past decades. And I think that we have an idea, if not a full appreciation, of what an enormous undertaking this change was. And I personally would like to offer my thanks to the undertakers.
Yes! Was that prophetic?
So I'd just like to ask, who is it that made this happen for us?
Mark.
Our Secretary Treasurer, Mark Taylor. If I could just add that if you remember a number of years ago, our former president, Norman Cantrell, put a series of articles in the journal in his presidential message, and he was using an analogy for a home or a building of some sort, and it was all in preparation, really, for the eventual restructuring of the bylaws. And he talked about the fact that the average house meetings had explained that he has about 350 associations in his group of clients, and PTG had a history of making more bylaws changes than all 350 of his other clients. So this really needed to be done.
Carl Lieberman, South Bay, following up on Ricky's question about classes membership and Paul's response. So, for instance, right now on our webpage, at the top right is find a registered technician, and you click that and we list all of the RPTs. Are we moving to a situation like MTNA when all members will be listed, but the RPTs will be listed first with logos, and then everyone else will be listed?
I can speak to that. I can speak to that. At this point, nothing has changed with regards to find a technician on the homepage. There has been some discussion suggesting that it might be a good thing to follow the MTA model and list everybody. So when a search comes up, like I said earlier, that you have all of the certified teachers of music with a very, very obvious bright logo indicating that, and that's who comes up first in the list. It's sorted that way. And then after that, all of a sudden, this wonderfully bright logo disappears, but there are other people